who comes from St Firmin's in Thirlby, the Reverend Carolyn Bailey, who's going to say prayers for us today. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Where's the washer? And the big one. No, isn't the big one? Okay, come on.
So then, members, first of all, can I ask the Chief Executive for apologies for absence, please? I know we have several, and I think we have a couple of members that might be arriving late.
Thank you very much. We've received apologies from Councillor Brooks, Councillor Clark, Councillor Mrs Clark, Councillor Cook, Councillor Hall, Councillor King, Councillor Wotton, Councillor Young, Councillor Coupland and Councillor Spratt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. So, item 2 of statutory. Are there any declarations of councillors' interests that we need to make note of, please? Thank you, Councillor Bowles.
Thank you, Chairman. In agenda item number 8 on the proposed amendment, I will declare an interest as I'm a trustee of a charity that delivers the holiday and activity funding programme in Gainsborough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's now noted. Any others? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Moving to item 3, the minutes of the meeting of the County Council that we held on the 19th of May 2023. That the minutes of the meeting of the County Council should be approved as correct and as a true record. Is everybody in agreement with that? Thank you, and you're all in favour. Thank you. Therefore, I will sign the minutes at the appropriate time. So, next, very interestingly, are the results of the by-election for Lincoln Carhome electional division. And we now move to item, as is in item 4, that the electoral return is as set out in Schedule 1 in the order of proceedings be noted. I'd like to take this opportunity to formally welcome Councillor Neil Murray to his first meeting of the council. I know that he is a long-standing member in the past with Lincoln City, and I look forward to his inclusion. Thank you. I'd also like to pay tribute to Councillor Robert Parker, who I know is retiring, and I want to invite Councillor Karen Lee, as I know she'd like to say a few words on his behalf, and then secondly, Councillor Dilks will follow. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is actually quite emotional, so I have written it down because I thought I might lose my place. It's a really sad day. We're all aware that Robert Parker stood down as a county councillor on the 31st of July, and I want to pay tribute to him on his retirement. Rob's played a big part in my own life, so I hope you'll forgive me if it's just a little bit subjective, some of it. The contribution, though, that Rob's made to this council and to the City of Lincoln is huge, and I know that all of us in this chamber wish him well. Rob led the Labour group here at the county for 35 years, and he said that his proudest moment as a councillor was the successful funding and opening of the University of Lincoln. And I think that's an accomplishment that we could all agree in here was something that was absolutely, it's transformed Lincoln. Rob will be remembered too for his deep concern about the plight of those who need support the most. He always fought hard for greater public spending on social services and education, and in more recent years he campaigned for greater action on environmental issues. Rob's a really bright man intellectually, and it was no surprise to me to discover either that he was named Scrutineer of the Year in 2011 by the Local Government Information Unit. From a personal perspective, I've known Rob just over 25 years. I first met him during the general election campaign of 1997, and when I moved into Carhome in 1998, our friendship grew. Rob always encouraged people to fulfil their potential, and it was Rob who came to my home in 2003 to ask if I'd consider putting my name forward for the vacancy on the City Council for Carhome Ward. And both Councillor Murray and I worked really closely with Rob for 20 years after that as Carhome, well, 20 years for Neil as Carhome councillors. And in 2010, which is an absolutely infamous year for Labour, both locally and nationally, I stood for re-election to the City Council, and Rob was my agent. On election day, he absolutely walked the legs off me. My feet were killing me by 10 p.m. It was worse than yesterday, actually, because we didn't give up working until well after dark, and I scraped home and won by a handful of votes, and that was in no way a small part, due to the hard work that Rob put in as my agent. And as friends and colleagues, Neil will remember, we shared so many Carhome Ward meetings, and these are a thing of legend within Lincoln Labour Party. After the business part of the meeting, we'd always have a long debate on something with a glass of wine and some excellent company, and people like Ivor Morgan and Agnes Barso and the late, great John Sharman were part of that group, and I'll never forget or cease to be grateful to be able to call them and Rob, and Sue, of course, my friends. And at this point, I must mention Sue Parker because she's always been Rob's greatest ally. She's supported Rob throughout his time in politics, and he couldn't have asked for any better than the support that she gave him, and our group would like to send her much love too. When I was elected to Parliament in 2017, Rob was always supportive, and I remember one day I walked to work from my flat in Pimlico down Millbank in 2018, and I spotted his familiar figure. We had a catch-up on home news and a big hug, and he walked away. And I reflected then, as I'd done many times before and since, that he could and should have been an MP. And well, that wasn't meant to be, but he certainly achieved a massive amount in his broad political career, and he made a huge difference to many lives. Right from being part of County Councillors' network, to helping out a constituent in the West End, to helping me organise the parking at Carhome Gala, year in, year out. And Rob paid attention to detail, whatever work he undertook. After I left Westminster, I took some time out politically to decide what I wanted to do, and Rob was hugely welcoming when I decided to put my name forward for the County Council in 2021. And it was always my intention to simply be a good representative for the area I live in. Scraping in again by this time just by 2 votes is a trend that I really want to break. Let's hope. 6 the first time and 2 the second time. But just to finish, I'd like to simply say that I didn't seek the leadership role. And I wish with all of my heart that Rob was still a councillor. He's not, though, and time moves on. But for today, I want to speak publicly of my huge respect for him and express the gratitude of us all here today for everything that Rob's done for Lincoln and for Lincolnshire County Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lovely tribute and well said. And I'm sure everybody joins with you in your final remarks. Councillor Dilts, please.
Blimey, full of that.
You will.
Seriously, may I associate myself with those warm words that I know were from the heart of the current leader of the opposition. I've also known Rob for a quarter of a century or more. As many of you know, I'm independent now, but I was Labour and served under his leadership for a number of years with a couple of breaks that were forced upon me. I've always had huge respect and continue to have huge respect for Rob's wisdom, integrity, intellect and skill as a political leader. As Karen says, when Rob was elected leader of this council in the mid-90s, he made it his mission to deliver a university for Lincoln, a change which has brought much needed and welcome vitality, freshness and culture, as well as economic boost to this city. I really got to know Rob from 2001 after I was elected as the first Labour County Councillor for my community of Deeping St James. As Karen says, Rob was then leader of the opposition group. We had more than 20 members then. And on my return to this chamber, forgive me, you write these things out, then you can't get to them. On my return to this chamber as an independent for this term, I've had the pleasure of serving on the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board, which Rob chaired, I believe, skillfully and presented the board's comments to the executive impartially and fairly. Can I say thanks, Rob, for your continuing friendship, dare I say, as an ex-Labour colleague, for your comradeship over many years. Had Lincoln Labour not gone for an all-women parliamentary shortlist prior to 1997, which I was part of promoting as a national officer for the Labour Party, Rob would have been the obvious choice as candidate for the city. But he generously put his personal ambition aside for the sake of wider progress and concentrated on his role as county councillor, leader of his group, and later long-time leader of, as I say, the opposition. And of course, a hugely respected member, I believe, across this chamber and in his division that he represented of Carhome that he loved, where he worked tirelessly, I know, for a generation to listen and respond to the needs of his local residents. If the book called The Best MP Lincoln Never Had ever gets written, I know Rob Parker would surely be at the top of that list. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. I understand that Councillor Martin Hill would like to say.
Just very briefly, I mean, obviously, it's quite unusual for tributes to be paid to somebody who's retiring, but I think in this case it's highly appropriate. All I would say, I would endorse all that's been said about Rob. And as chairman of East Midlands Councils, there was, again, warm appreciation from across the political spectrum. I was asked to write to Rob to thank him for his many years of service. So I hope that as chairman you could actually write to him on our behalf to say thank you very much, really well job done, and we will miss you.
It will be a great privilege. Thank you very much. Now, turning to chairman's announcements, I have published them, but in particular, I'd like to mention RAF Digby, which was so interesting as they have the World War II Museum, but they also spoke of the arrival of a satellite expansion of GCHQ, for which they will welcome 50% of applicants for the extra employment from Lincolnshire people. So I think that is really something that is very much to be commended. I'd like to move on now. It's with a heavy heart that I have to report the death of Councillor Ray Wootton. Ray served the Grantham North Division and was elected to the County Council in June 2009 and served as chairman of the council from May 2013 to May 2014, and I know many members here will fondly remember that. He was chairman of the Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee from May 2021 to May 22 and vice chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board from December 2017 till May 2021. And vice chairman of Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee from May 2015 to May 2017. Councillor Wootton was also chairman of the South Lincolnshire Local Access Forum from July 2012 to May 2019. He was one of the original members of the Lincolnshire Police and Crime Panel and was elected as an inaugural chairman of the panel, undertaking this role from November 2012 until June 2013, and subsequently elected vice chairman of the panel. He was also a serving member of South Kesteven District Council. It is with much sadness that I also have to report the death of a former County Councillor, Mike Williams, who was elected to the County Council in June 2021 and represented Grantham South electoral division until May 2005, when he was elected to the Grantham East division. He chose not to stand again in 2009. Now, it's also with sadness, and it's mentioned today because unfortunately Councillor Barry Young died after the last council meeting. He was first elected in 1997 and represented the former Sleaford Rural South electoral division until May 2017, and following the boundary changes he was elected to represent the Heckington electoral division from May 2017 until his retirement in May 2021. A former chairman of the Audit Committee, Mr Young was Executive Councillor for Crime Reduction, People Management and Legal from May 2013 until May 2016. And he was also an Executive Councillor for Community Safety and People Management from May 2016 until May 2021. Mr Young was also a former member, likewise, to Councillor Wootton on the Lincolnshire Police Authority and served on the Lincolnshire Police and Crime Panel until 2017. I'd therefore like to invite members to be upstanding for a minute's silence and pay tribute in a normal way. I know there will be many thoughts going through all of our minds. Thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to offer the opportunity for those to speak, and I understand that Councillor Martin Hill is going to lead. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, unusually we have three very substantial figures who we are marking the passing of this morning. Excuse me. If I start with Councillor Mike Williams, who represented, as you said, Grantham for 8 years. Similar to Councillor Dilks, he started life as a Labour councillor and then he became an independent. Very well respected and known in Grantham. He and his wife ran at least one pub in Grantham. There might be more, I don't know, but he was very well known and liked in the town. And I'm sure if he'd chosen to carry on as a councillor after 2009, he would have done so. I think he was from Yorkshire, so he was quite, and he made no secret about the fact he was from Yorkshire. But again, politics aside, he was a good person to get on with, and he represented his area very well. And I know that one we remember with fondness. Obviously, Councillor Wootton, very recently sadly died, a serving councillor. Known Ray a long time. I won't go on too much about Ray because I know there'll be a lot of people who want to say it, but again, a very well known and respected figure in Grantham. And I always used to say to him in election time, I said, well, you can just sit at home and do nothing, Ray, because whatever you do, you'll still get elected. Well known as a campaigner for his area, in particular Grantham Hospital, and he was tireless in his efforts to do that. Substantial contributions to the hospital, Save Grantham Hospital campaign, and again there's been tributes have been across the political spectrum to him. Again, somebody will be sadly missed. As you said, he was chairman here, but also had various roles in support. A very honourable and upright gentleman, and was very careful, and when he had to retire from the police for injury, he devoted the rest of his life to politics in the South Kesterton area, and he did that to the best of his ability, and the hours that he'd spent on serving the people he represented and the people of Lincolnshire was phenomenal. The final one, of course, is Councillor Barry Young, who, as you said, came on in 1993. Again, a very substantial service. He was a cabinet member for quite some time. He was also actually chairman of the old police authority, so he was I think very well respected in that role. And I think actually he did hope to be chairman of the new, become the police and crime commissioner, but that didn't happen. And I think in retrospect, people thought that was a mistake. But when he'd done all that work with the police, he came over, and I was very happy to have him serving us in the cabinet. Obviously a lawyer, and like with a lot of lawyers, if you asked him his opinion, you'd get a lengthy reply, and then you get an equally lengthy other opinion, and you're sort of left with, well, you can take your pick, really. So we attended the funeral of Barry back in the summer. Teckington Church was brimful, and his brother was there, who I have to say is another Barry, but it was a very joyful and actually funny service, and again, somebody we will sadly miss. Again, somebody who had a lot of knowledge, expertise, which was I think all of us, including officers, found very helpful in terms of opinion, because although he wasn't a local government lawyer, he knew his facts. And finally, I would say in terms, not many of us here now, but when we've had our difficult times in terms of when we had the public interest report, etc., and things were very difficult, I have to say Barry was one of those who stood up, did the right thing, even though it was very difficult. And ever since that time in the early 2000s, I always knew he was one of those people, if the bullets were flying, he was going to be there, stood beside you. So thank you for that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mark Whittington, I understand, Councillor Whittington, would you like to say a
Yes,
few words?
yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak about both former councillors Ray Wootton and Mike Williams. I'm the current Mayor of Grantham, as some people may know. Both Ray and Mike were also former mayors of Grantham as well. In fact, Mike Williams was Mayor of Grantham twice. I'll speak a little bit about Mike first, and then Ray. It's really, really sad because Mike's wife Avril, who was also a former Mayor of Grantham, only passed away about 3 weeks ago. And unfortunately, Mike's final illness was caused by the death of his wife. And unfortunately, I attended Avril's funeral last week as Mayor of Grantham. Unfortunately, Mike had to watch the service from Lincoln Hospital. And I was speaking to his family in the week because we're doing a civic funeral. We did a civic funeral for Avril, doing one for Mike. And the view of the family was that it was the death of his wife of 60 years. I knew Mike long before I entered into getting involved in politics because, as Councillor Hill has said, he ran several pubs in Grantham, including the Joiners Arms, which many years ago in my youth was one I used to frequent on occasion. And so I knew Mike and Avril. And interestingly, when I first stood as a county councillor in 2015 in the by-election, Mike actually stood against me for the Lincolnshire independence. And I bumped into him several times on the campaign, and also at the count had a very long chat with him. I've been picking up comments from people in Grantham who knew him to say what a warm-hearted and generous individual he was, who really cared about his locality and represented his residents very, very well indeed. Coming on to Ray Wootton, I first got to know Ray after I'd been elected for my seat in Grantham in 2015. And with Ray also being a fellow Grantham councillor, during those sort of initial few months, him and Linda sort of kind of took me under their wing a little bit and sort of guided me through how the county council worked and whatever. I became involved in that campaign regarding Grantham Hospital, which I know Ray and also Linda cared very, very passionately about. You know, they won all the marches, and they took, I believe, that when they went down to number 10 Downing Street to take, I think, a 40,000 signature petition to number 10. Ray was there. Ray was a very, very dear friend and political colleague, and I shall miss him greatly. And my best thoughts and regards go out to Linda and his family. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I understand Councillor Andrew Key would like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak about Barry Young. I've known Barry for many years, since he first moved to Heckington, and he played a really big part in village life, as well as having a very demanding job as well. He was editor of the Village magazine, he was a church warden of St Andrews for many years, and chairman of the Relief in Need charities, amongst other jobs that he did. And of course, he was our county councillor for so long too. Personally, he became a very good friend of mine. I loved his sense of humour, his dry wit, and his vast knowledge of so many things. The new year before lockdown, my wife and I spent a lovely new year with Barry and his wife Sue in Edinburgh for Hogmanay, a world away from the very difficult times that were just around the corner, a very special memory that I'll always cherish. So today, I pay tribute to Barry's long years of service to the Heckington Division and our village especially, and of course to the county as a whole through the police authority and this council. But most of all, I pay tribute and say goodbye to a very dear and much missed friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Clark.
Thank you, Chair. The Labour Group wishes to say thank you to 3 councillors who gave a lot to the public service. In particular, I want to say about Ray Wootton. Me and Ray both got elected on the same day, 4th of June 2009. Over the period, we sat in many committees, not always agreeing, but he was always polite and professional when he was telling me where I was going wrong. He was such a nice man, and he was a credit both to the council and to the county. And, you know, I'd just like to say thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackie Brockworth.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to pay tribute to both Barry Young and Ray Wootton, please. I got to know Barry because I was very interested in aspects of his portfolio area. And I was always very grateful about the kind way and tolerant way he let me run riot around his subject areas. I mean, I'm quite sure that there were times when he really wanted to tip me off the end of a cliff, but he didn't. And as a result, he would spend time with me and explain and develop ideas. And I found that I was able to develop my own work as a result of my exposure to him and his knowledge. And I'll always be grateful for that. Ray, well, Ray, absolutely quietly working, solid, reliable, truthful, honest, always stepped up to help if somebody was in trouble. I became very close to Ray and Linda, and always very grateful for their encouragement and support. And I do think with Ray that he's one of those people who is always there, quietly doing the work. And when they disappear, those people, they leave a hole. But when they leave that hole, you realise that you feel the hole because you've been lucky enough to know them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marion Overton.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to add a few words. Firstly, Ray Wootton, I would like to support what's been said. I think he was a tremendously great integrity, and I think that shone through. And it means that that kind of approach, as has been said, I think has an atmosphere. It brings an atmosphere with it, and it helps us all to behave the best we can be. On Councillor Williams, I just want to add, and it has been mentioned, that he did stand as a Lincolnshire Independent, so I was really pleased to work with him, to door knock and talk to residents. And I was really impressed with how well known and well liked he was in his community. He had such a deep love of people. He was really always would do his absolute best. He would do anything he could for local people. And although his health wasn't as much as it could have been, I think that would have made a big difference if he could actually get round himself as well to the same level as he would have liked. He just brought with him a great sense of warmth and love of people and of his community, and doing the best possible job he could. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't got much in depth to say, but I have just a few rather poignant memories of both Barry and Ray. As regards Barry Young, I can picture him still sitting over there, so upright in all that he did, in the way in which he carried himself and his manner. But then my last two sights of him were very, very sad, really. I remember when I was chairman here, first of all, seeing him at the Lincolnshire show in a wheelchair, not the same Barry that I'd remembered, and I don't think he recognised me, but also then in a wheelchair at the closure event for RAF Scampton. So someone who, although still no longer the upright gentleman that he had been, was there at these events. And, you know, those are very poignant memories for me. I haven't prepared this at all, so you must excuse me being a little bit hesitant. Again, Ray Wootton. Ray was my first chairman when I joined LCC in 2013, and it must have been approximately a year later when I was Mayor of Boston, and Ray was there, I think, on behalf of South Kesteven, though if I'm wrong, please forgive me, but if it was South Kesteven, the chairman of that council had died in office, and Reg Howard. And I remember going to his funeral in my capacity as mayor and seeing Ray as we came out from that funeral, standing guard over the chains of office that Reg had formerly been wearing. And that's it, isn't it? Such an upright person. And those are the memories which I take, and I think we all share our best wishes for Linda's future without Ray by her side. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Phil Dilks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thankfully, we don't have to remember the passing of 3 such big characters at the same meeting. Knowing all 3, I was not surprised, and have not been surprised this morning, that we're all queuing up to pay our respects to them. I served with Barry Young first on this council. I didn't know Barry well, I've got to say, but I do have fond memories of him during his chairmanship of the former Lincolnshire Police Authority before it was abolished. I did know and served at different times with both Mike Williams and Ray Wootton, 2 local councillors, I might say, with different political views, but perhaps both what you might call old school. Mike had a wicked, dry sense of observational humour, and which I absolutely loved. But what I remember about both, in addition to their obvious love for their communities of Grantham, was their ability always to be smartly turned out. Both always in neatly pressed white shirt and ties. In all the years I knew Ray, I don't think I ever saw him in anything that might pass as casual. Always properly suited and booted, and particularly when he was representing his people. Ray Wootton lived a lifetime of public service, we've heard that, which has already been well covered this morning. At the more recent police and crime panel meetings, where we had a few pleasant chats and private chats at the coffee machine, where he shared a few tales of his earlier life as a police officer nicking wrong-uns in Bedfordshire. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to them. And of course, he did tell me how he was actually took, a serious injury that led to him having to retire. But one memory, and a really fond memory I have of Ray, was the really tearful and moving eulogy he made at the funeral of our mutual friend and former councillor here, Bob Adams, just not too long ago. But whatever, it seems clear to me and to everyone who's spoken that despite his public service in the service of others, Ray's first priority was always Linda, Councillor Linda Wootton. They were a good advert for married life, and I'm sure all our hearts and sympathy go out to Linda at this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Boutroy.
Thank you. I just wanted to say a few words about Barry Young. When I first got on this council, Barry took me under his wing as his support officer, and I was always in awe of Barry, really, with his knowledge of the legal skills, his love for his family, and sorry, we've got 2 microphones on, I think, and his passion for Lincolnshire, really, and I think it's just, I think it's been evident in everything that everyone said this morning, particularly Barry's dress and how well he was dressed. I think I went to see Sue after Barry passed away, and I think one of the questions the funeral people had was, "Are you sure you want to put him in them shoes and that suit?" Because he even in death, he was probably one of the smartest, best dressed person I know, and he would have found that funny as well, because he had an absolute wicked sense of humour. I always had the best times with Barry, and inside of this chamber and this council, and lucky enough to be outside and socialising with him as well. And I think we'll all know he'd be very sadly missed from here and Lincolnshire, and from his family as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we're there at that, aren't we? I think before moving back to business, I think the thing that in listening to everybody's tributes, several of these people, they never actually ever retired, did they? They always gave to the community through their retirement quality years as well. So, a complete itinerary of civil engagements since the last meeting of the council are available in the usual practice from the civil office. Moving on to item 6, statements and announcements by the leader and members of the executive. Councillor Hill, would you like to speak on the statements, please?
No, I'd just like to move them. I believe, Councillor, there will be a contribution from Councillor Corey.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lindsay Crawley.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to add to something that you wrote in your statement, so thank you. And I'm sure everyone's read the Chairman's statement in detail. And I just wanted to let people know that Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue is hosting this year's United Kingdom Rescue Organisations Festival of Rescue. And this is a 2-day festival involving over 30 fire and rescue services, which I think constitutes over 300 firefighters from across the country. And we're also delighted to include teams from Ireland, France and Romania. So the UKRO was set up over 30 years ago to develop skills and encourage innovation in the rescue sector. And it's run by practitioners, predominantly from fire and rescue and the medical sectors, to advance professional care at incidents, particularly trauma incidents. And one of the ways that the UKRO trials techniques and tests skills is through this Festival of Rescue, which tests crews across disciplines including vehicle extrication, rope rescue, water, urban rescue, and trauma care. So over the next 2 days, these skills will be on show to the public at Lincoln Castle, the Lawn, the Cathedral and the Brayford. And if you're in Newark, why would you? There is also a swift water rescue taking place on the Trent Weir. So if you want to know more information, please do go to ukro.org. And as you know, Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue currently has a team of 4 firefighters and Colin the dog, helping to search for victims of the devastating Moroccan earthquake. And I'm pleased to let you know that, that they're all doing well, and that the techniques used by urban search and rescue dogs and their handlers will be on show as part of the USAR discipline, and that will be at the Lawns. So all these activities are taking place throughout today and Saturday, so please do go along to support firefighters from across the country and Europe and see firsthand how they use their skills to help us when we need them most. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Quite an exciting week, and I'm really pleased that you've been able to remind us. Moving to item 7, so we have questions to the Chairman, the Leader, Executive Councillors and the Chairman of Committees and indeed subcommittees. And I believe I've got a list of proportionality just being passed over to me. So, first of all, question 1 is from Councillor Hugo Marfleet to Councillor Patricia Bradwell, please.
Morning, thank you, Chairman. My question to Patricia Bradwell is in relation to post-16 transport. I've spoken to a few parents and children along the way, and basically a lot of our children spend a lot of time sat on buses and trains getting across Lincolnshire to go to their choice of education. There is a cost to it, especially rail costs are horrendous. And when they get there, they would like a full day rather than a sort of 1 or 2 hours and then have to come all the way back across Lincolnshire again. And sometimes our train services are very dysfunctional, especially while they're striking. So I'd ask that this council works with the providers of post-16 education to take into account public transport, bus and rail timetables and the cost of transport, so that the start, finish and the duration of the day is aligned to the transport table and maximising learning opportunities, supporting these children across our large rural area, and I would hope that we can sort of find a better alignment between our transport and the education offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Ken. Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, it does help if we listen, doesn't it?
I think I need to answer that question. Well, I think, Councillor Marfleet, you're referring to college and not to schools. And obviously, colleges work in a very different way to schools. I mean, if you're in the sixth form at a school or fifth year, you know, you have a full day of study. Colleges are slightly different because actually they're not just dealing with young people, they're dealing with adults as well. I do take on board what you're saying. If, you know, parents are paying for buses there and back during the school term, it isn't cheap anymore. It can be expensive, especially if you've got more than one. And so therefore, I will work with our Director of Children's Services. Although we have no control or anything over colleges, I think it would be worth us going and explaining what Councillor Marfleet's experiencing. I know Councillor Marfleet lives out in a rural area, and actually Lincolnshire is one of the largest rural counties in the country, so this will not just be an issue for Councillor Marfleet and the people he's spoken to, it will be an issue for everyone. So I think it is worth us going, and then we'll report back what the college principal has said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradwell. Now, a second attempt. Councillor Clark, also a question to Councillor Patricia Bradwell.
Morning, Councillor. There are 6 schools in the Bootham Division. I received an email recently from yourself stating a review was undertaken in the LA schools and no rack concrete was found. Can you explain how the review was undertaken and if the said review highlighted any other issues? And also if the review of the academies has now been fully undertaken? Thank you.
I can say we have reviewed all our properties, but I'm going to pass over to Councillor Boothroyd because he's the property person and will know more about it. But we have done a review of the schools, so pass over. Councillor Boothroyd.
Thank you. I was expecting a question, so I have got a paper here, but I won't go through and read it all out. Basically, since June 2021, we commissioned Vinci, our partners, to do inspections on all our properties and schools. We found that obviously academies from that are excluded, but what we've actually done is, like the government, we've written to all academies asking for them to confirm back to us that they are clear from RAC. So that process is ongoing, but I think most have confirmed now back to us. I think I might be wrong, but also just having a look through. Yeah, we don't have any county schools that have RAC. I think that's been confirmed, hasn't it? Sorry. And then we're just sort of getting confused between that, and then we're also just looking on to our survey. So we're doing intrusive surveys as well. Obviously, the first stage is to do a visual inspection, and then if we can't see the structure of the building, we obviously go in and do a more intrusive survey. Some of them have been taking place at the same time as we've done asbestos surveys, and we're looking to do that now. There were 4 sites that had further checks, and out of them 4 sites, there was none that had RAC as well. So I think, but what we're also doing is we're investigating, and we're going back through all our records just to double check that you know we are confident with everything that we've got. So it's still ongoing, but we at this stage we are confident that we have identified that there's no RAC in our buildings across Lincolnshire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's good to hear. Councillor Marion Overton, I believe you have a question for Councillor Martin Hill, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask about the devolution proposals, or are they reorganisation? I hope that it is only devolution to. We've asked for it to be to our councils as they are. But the question is, I see from your report, which you've helpfully updated, about the point would be for food, energy security, ports and logistics. Does the energy security part mean that there would be a lot more turbines and a lot more than the 35,000 acres of solar panels that we've already got proposed? And does it mean that a lot more of our staff time and energy and money would be spent on creating a free port in another area? Thank you.
Thank you for the question about the Greater Lincolnshire devolution proposal. There is the update in my report, so I won't add to that to say that progress has been made. There was a bit of a hiatus during the August break for civil servants, so we are now back in serious discussions with civil servants, and the overall plan is to have something which this council can then debate late October, early November seems to be the latest, but I don't want to get pinned down on a date. Just to confirm very clearly, this proposal has nothing to do with reorganisation. That is quite clear. The government, when it started this latest round of devolution, unlike the previous round, where actually reorganisation was a requirement, this time, very clear, they're saying, we really want to concentrate on devolving matters to councils. We don't really want to have to spend a lot of time talking about arguments about unitarisation. So although they said councils can if they wish to, they're very clear that that's something they don't really want to go down there. The important thing is get this devolution done, and I would heartily agree with them. So no question that anything to do with this proposal has to do with reorganisation councils. Second part about you asked about energy and so on. Quite clearly, this is about energy generation, and there is a lot in the county, and as there is a lot of generation going on in North Lincolnshire, you know, around the Humber estuary. There's a lot of industry up there, and they obviously building, you know, they assemble wind turbines there. There's a lot of activity there. And there's activity in this part of the county as well. But there is no intention to, I mean, obviously, there is no intention to actually that to mean that we're going to increase, have wind turbines on land in this county. Independently, you know, the government's consulting on putting through, well, it's gone through the bill now, so I'm sure Colin Davey will talk to that, but certainly from this side of the chamber, I think we're very clear that we would resist, as we have done before, inappropriate development, whether it be wind turbine or too much from the solar farms and etc. So that's got nothing to do with it. It is all about what is happening already and supporting particularly what goes on in the south bank of the Humber, which actually, and you said another area, well, it isn't actually another area, it's still Lincolnshire as far as I'm concerned. And the Humber Freeport, again, is part of their ambition, and whatever happens, if we get this devolution bill and we're able to get more investment, I'm quite clear that that will have a massive impact, not only in North Lincolnshire, but for the whole county. And I think we need to remember that these days, just as one geography, nothing happens in one geography which doesn't impact the other. So, frankly, if there was great success south of the Humber, that would be very good for the whole of Lincolnshire. And there will be great success, I believe, if this ever happens, for the south of the county, for the Food Valley programme which we're doing. So everybody wins, and I think I hope we're not going to get into arguments about who I win, you lose, and all that, because the whole point of this is, which has been proved by the success of Greater Lincolnshire LEP, and actually has been proved by the practice of ever since I've been leader, when I talk to colleagues around the Greater Lincolnshire area, we all look for the common good, and we all accept that actually sometimes something happens in one area of Lincolnshire it benefits all of us. And I think a classic example is the dualling of the A46 between Lincoln and Newark. Most of it's not even in, and the dualling of the 46 from Newark to Leicester. That has a massive positive impact on Lincolnshire, and I think we all know the only missing link is Newark, but that has, even though Newark to Leicester is not in Lincolnshire, it has a massive it's had a massive positive impact on us. So I think we've got to look at these things in a broader outlook apart from just looking at particular little geographies, and it's all about doing that. And I can assure you, so first of all, no reorganisation, and no, there will be no change in, well, unless the council decides, and obviously that's a debate to become. There is no intention of part of this to be more friendly to onshore turbines or indeed mass solar panels, which currently are on the horizon through a different route. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mark Whittington, I believe you have a question for Councillor Richard Davies, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, my question is to Richard. It relates to an area of road that I know Richard knows very well because it's very close to both his division and also to where he grew up. I'm referring to the A52 section from the A1A52 junction out to the Leicestershire border as it goes past Princeby Sedgebrook. There's been an increasing spate of accidents along that stretch of road over recent months. Several fatalities as well. It's a very twisty piece of road. There's been some examples of some really, really poor driving. I was at Sedgebrook Parish Council last night. The village hall was full. There's about 35, 40 villagers there, all expressing concerns about the spate of accidents and the impact that this is having on them. It's also going to be discussed by two other parish councils that will be impacted in the next couple of months, both at Barrowby and Allington. And I know the Bodyford Parish Council, just inside Leicestershire, have also been raising this as an issue. Obviously, this section of road is run by National Highways and not by LCC. I just, question to Richard is, obviously, the residents want some kind of action taken. They want some representation to National Highways. It's really to see if Richard would be prepared to have a meeting with me, perhaps also do a site visit to sort of discuss what sort of help and support LCC Highways could have in forming our representations to National Highways. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mark. I do know the road well, like one of the roads I learned to drive on. Many years ago, colleagues who are probably a bit longer in the tooth than some will remember, the Muss and Bends towards Botisford was straightened out. There's no denying there's an accident record here. There's been over a dozen relatively serious accidents over the last few years. Interesting, looking through the C19 police reports, speed isn't directly quoted as a cause for many of them. There have been a number of accidents caused by people using their mobile phones, not paying attention, but also things such as sun blindness. So I think we need to look at a holistic response before we rush to any one direction as to what the solution is. Very happy to meet you on site. We can have a look at it with one of our teams and maybe somebody from the Road Safety Partnership, recognising it's not directly our road.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Davies. I remember many years ago, this particular stretch of road, the landlady in those days used to be called Nancy at the Gap, so it brings back fond memories. So, moving on, the next question, please, is from Councillor Bowles to, again, Councillor Richard Davies, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Davies, recently large areas of my division have undergone road resurfacing works, which residents and I have both welcomed and appreciated. However, residents' positive feelings and thanks have soon been watered down when they realised that Newlands, which is widely considered the worst road surface in the division and arguably in the town, has again been left unrepaired. This road sits in the middle of and is surrounded by the roads that have all just been recently resurfaced, so it really does stick out like a sore thumb even more than it did previously. I understand the issue is that the surface is a different type and requires some specialist equipment. However, over the last 3 years, I've been constantly told it is in the work programme, it is coming, it is in the work programme, it is coming, but we're no further forward. Is there anything you could do to look into this and see if we can move the issue on so that the goodwill and the thanks that residents have shown is not going to waste, and the bemusement they're seeing because this one road is still left there sticking out like a sore thumb and is just causing problems, anger, questions that I'm unable to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely, I'll look into it in more detail. But broadly, the issue with this type of issue is that it's about the best return on investment we can deliver. I don't know the details of Newlands, but if it's a very expensive road to repair for a relatively small amount of section, sometimes we have to make a decision as to whether that same amount of money could have a better impact spent elsewhere. That's not to diminish the thoughts of yourself or your residents, but you know, against an austere backdrop, we have to make very difficult decisions at times. I know later on today we are discussing funding and finance, so depending on the outcome of that, we might be able to do something.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Austin for Councillor Richard Davis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My question to Councillor Richard Davis is on behalf of the Boston Preservation Trust. Significant damage is being caused to the very old heritage properties in Boston between the marketplace and the traffic lights at Haven Bridge. This is caused by traffic of all types, including buses. Please could you, Councillor Davis, visit this location and consider the introduction of additional traffic calming measures to try and address this problem, and to consider the suitability of this stretch of road for buses in particular. Thank you.
I think for clarification for colleagues, I think the area you're referring to falls into Councillor Anton Danny's patch, which I, funnily enough, enjoyed one of the best cups of coffee I've had in living memory very recently there. The cake counter was also sufficiently inviting, I must say. At Councillor's Cafe, we've talked a lot, actually looked at Boston issues, in particular around traffic using the marketplace. Historically, one of the concerns about putting more restrictions in place is it is, relatively speaking, a thriving marketplace, and colleagues around the county will recognise that not all markets are the same. The issue around taking buses out of the marketplace is extremely contentious, and with respect to the forum you mentioned what they want, for me it's about the local representative as to what he thinks is best as the democratically elected member. And I know in particular we are working extremely hard to sort out speed issues around the town centre, but also I think it's fair to say, Councillor, improving bus access in particular. And one of the issues we're looking at is how do we improve bus facilities in the marketplace. So I suspect we're not looking to remove bus services from the town centre, because in the past when it's been suggested, lots of people, particularly those regular bus users, regard it as a real retrograde step because you're taking people away from the shops. And I don't think that feels like the right solution. One thing I would say, and this applies to everybody, you know, if your residents have concerns about the road doing damage to their house, please, the standard approach is to speak to your house insurer and arrange for surveys and things to be done by your insurance company. If that's then proven, we can take a look. But as a result, it's a really grey area as to who's causing these things. So other than that, I think that's the best approach to take. But I would be very nervous about removing public transport from Boston's town centre. I think that's potentially a dangerous thing to do.
Sorry. Councillor Sue Rawlings for Councillor Colin Davey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Davey, there is an apparent lack of understanding at government level of the very significant problems that the proposal to ban the fitting of new oil-fired and other boilers after September 2026 in favour of possible heat pump solutions will involve, putting severe financial strain on those rural residents who will have to comply in such a short timescale, with grant funding being limited and the replacement costs involving not only the appliances themselves, but substantial related plumbing and installation works.
Additionally, there are questions to answer around the availability of qualified labour to deliver the transformation in the allotted time and the current strain on household budgets and savings. Retrofitting existing buildings, particularly those that were constructed many years ago, will be very expensive, and the heating provided will be below current levels. Around 1.1 million homes, 75% of rural properties in England, are not connected to the gas grid and currently use some of the most carbon-intensive heating fuels, such as oil and coal. There needs to be flexibility in the government's policies here. What works in inner London is very different from what will affect Lincolnshire's constituents. Can LCC make representations to the government, and can LCC members scrutinise the implications further? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rawlings, for the question, and I agree with the entire thrust of it. I mean, I think the new energy bill imposes some very draconian measures on rural communities in particular. I mean, we all know Lincolnshire is a very sparse, large rural county. We have a lot of people who live off-grid, using gas and coal and wood to heat their homes. And there is no way the timescales laid down in the energy bill are achievable. We do not have the labour who are trained to actually even fit the equipment. We don't manufacture the equipment here. Most of it's made in China. So in the answer to the thrust of the question, yes, we should be making representations about how it impacts on Lincolnshire and on Lincolnshire's residents, because that's what we're here to do. Our job is to stand up for Lincolnshire's residents and make sure we communicate to government in the correct way. But yes, I do think the economic impact of energy costs on our county is now severe. Only this week we've reported that the takings on coastal businesses have fallen between 30 to 50% this year. Energy costs are crippling our country, and we have got to get government to actually realise that trying to lock people up because they might burn some coal or wood to keep warm is not the right way to go in terms of achieving the ambitions of a net zero future. We've got to manage this process in a way that is deliverable for our communities across the country, and we've got to do so in a way that is sustainable for future generations. There is no point every day China building a new coal-fired power station so they can make wind turbines in China, which are a third of the cost of European producers. What's the point of all of this? We've really got to start thinking about our nation and get manufacturing working again to produce the goods we need, and we need cheaper, affordable, secure energy to do that. Wherever that comes from, we need to actually get on and deliver it, because we're not doing it at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, would you allow a point of information?
Yes, if you want to give me one.
Thank you, Chairman, for your indulgence. Just to expand on the point that Councillor Davey was making, we emit 8% of the world's CO2, so if China can build one power station, we could fall into the ocean tomorrow and it wouldn't make the blindest bit of difference, yet we are penalising the poorest and the hardest up people in Lincolnshire. So it's absolutely right of what's been said by colleagues that we stand and fight for them. Thank you, Chairman, for your indulgence.
Right, well, I'll go with the accuracy of the point of information. Councillor Karen Lee, please. You have a question, I understand, for Councillor Patricia Bradwell.
I think there's been a misunderstanding, actually. My question was for Councillor Richard Davies. I changed it at the beginning of the week. I've probably still got the email. So can I ask Councillor Davies? It's not a trick one. It's not a trick one.
And quite frankly, Councillor Karen Lee, I don't think we've exactly heard the normal average amount of dialogue from Councillor Davies, so I will allow it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's not a tricky one, I promise. My question's about parking in Lincoln City Centre after 6 o'clock at night for people who are disabled. I was contacted by a woman last week, and she told me that after 6 p.m. in the evening, there's no parking that is specifically designated for people who are disabled. After that time, restrictions are lifted, and because parking spaces are then taken up by able-bodied vehicle owners, people who are disabled find it really difficult to park, particularly if they're out for an evening's entertainment. What had happened, her daughter is the disabled person, and she'd gone to see something at the drill hall. tried to park, there was nothing nearby, all the spots had been taken up. So she then went nearby, and this lady's she's dyslexic as well. She thought it was somewhere she could park, and it wasn't, it was a taxi spot. So she ended up with a ticket. They've appealed it. They've told her she's got to pay it, and that's it. I think that's very unfair under the circumstances, but there was no leniency. But anyway, my question to you is, will you have a look at the policy and just consider the allocation of a number of parking spaces, just a number, which are designated for disabled people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And I suppose you can't even just do that for Lincoln. You'd have to look at it in the round. But it's just something that I want to bring up publicly and say to you, you know, this, I'm told for disabled people that this is a problem. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, very happy to look at that. I wasn't aware of it. I don't know the detail. The only slight caveat I would suggest is the problem is if there is a TRO in place that has a time limit on it, to change it's going to require that formal legal process, which is at the minimum a 13-week consultation period. So there is no quick fix. And, you know, we have a backlog, which I'm pleased to announce is reducing quite significantly of TROs, but it adds to the workload, so there won't be an immediate fix. But I'll take a look at it and come back to you because it's a good idea.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phil Dilks, you have a question for Councillor Martin Hill.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Councillor Hill, I know many colleagues across this chamber share my deep concerns at the devastating cuts to police community support officer numbers across Lincolnshire and the damaging impact the cuts are having on neighbourhood policing. Clearly, the public are also concerned about this. Just this morning, I've been passed a copy of a letter from residents of North Lane, Navenby, to the Chief Constable and to our PCC, our Police and Crime Commissioner, complaining about the alleged failure of the police to deal with antisocial behaviour by gangs of youths said to be drinking, taking drugs and, quote, putting our community in fear of violence and aggression. I understand this was reported to the local PCSO just over a month ago, who said he'd sort it. But that was before he was redeployed to Grantham, leaving Navenby, like whole swathes of Lincolnshire currently, with no PCSO cover. This is surely the very issue PCSOs were brought in to tackle. You'll recall I raised this issue in the last budget debate, and while we were unable to find funding then to sponsor at least some PCSOs, as this council has done in the past, may I ask you now, and in your early considerations for next year's budget, to consider what this council can do to support the fight against crime and antisocial behaviour across the county. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dilks. As you know, I've always been a very big supporter of PCSOs. I don't want to particularly rerun the debate we had at the budget meeting, but obviously what did turn out was that in terms of uniformed people who are working for the police, there are actually more now, that includes PCSOs of course, there are more now than there were before. I'm pleased you've contacted the Chief Constable and the Police and Crime Commissioner, and obviously any thoughts about what the next year's budget might look like will be taken into consideration, but at this stage, as we haven't even had our formal settlement yet, I think it's premature, but as always, all things will be looked at and considered.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Bunny, please. I understand you have a question for Councillor Dan McNally.
Thank you, Chair. LCC's policy in supporting the circular economy by emphasising the reduction, reuse and recycle message regarding waste is to be welcomed. The recently introduced reuse facility at Tattershall Household Waste Recycling Centre being a tangible example of this policy at work. Currently, in Market Raisin, residents who walk to the centre with their waste are refused entry on the grounds that this is County Council policy. Clearly, this is against the basic principles of the circular economy and also environmentally unfriendly in that it means people need to be using polluting fossil fuels and or will encourage fly tipping. If it is indeed against county policy to allow pedestrian entry, could I ask that this is rethought? If the problem is one of safety in that cars and pedestrians mixing, perhaps a dedicated compound skip could be located near the entrance to permit on-foot deliveries. Can I conclude by saying that not all residents own or have access to motor vehicles, and now that we collect less overspill from the bins than we used to do, people are advised to take it to the household waste cycle centres. If they haven't got a motor vehicle, they're unable to do this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You're not the first person to ask that. I know Councillor Parkins asked it before, Councillor Whittington's asked it as well. The short answer is no, and the reason for that is the fact that commercial vehicles will park outside the sites and start walking their waste in, and not only that, but we can't allow people parking the vehicles outside, especially like Lincoln, where it's congested enough at times anyway. So really it's to stop commercial users. If people have got some, a bit more waste, then, speak to your neighbour or friend and see if they'll take it for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Matthews, you have a question for Councillor Colin Davey, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's like a version of Coronation Street, this. It's an on-running saga. I'm asking Councillor Davey for an update on the Outer Dowsing wind farm onshore route. But I would also like an update on the offshore wind farm situation, because they're linked. And do we know more about the proposed substations in the Alford area and the likelihood of the line of massive pylons being proposed to move offshore wind power to the south of England actually being built? These pylons are casting a metaphorical shadow over much of my ward, and I'm interested to know what action LCC is taking to resist before they begin to cast actual shadows. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews, for the question. Firstly, on Outer Dowsing, since our last meeting, the National Grid have confirmed that the connection point for Outer Dowsing wind farm will be at Western Marsh near Spalding. So that means a giant undergrounding cable route from near Anderby in my own division all the way down around the 52 down to Western Marsh. So it will involve the construction of new substations there by National Grid and by the Outer Dowsing Company. So that will be a significant impact on the Western Marsh area. We will obviously, when the application comes as a formal document, we will look at it and analyse it very carefully. And we will be looking at soil analysis, for instance, this time, because there's now quite clear evidence that soil does not recover when it's disturbed in the same way that it is alleged it does. So we are going to analyse soil, because the importance of our agricultural land for the growing of crops needs to be remembered always in all planning applications. So that's where we are with Outer Dowsing. In terms of the wider offshore wind sector, there are another 4 giant wind farms already granted consent through the Crown Estates for off our coastline. There is clear evidence now that there are some significant challenges going on in the offshore sector. Vattenfall have a consent to build a giant wind farm off the Norfolk coast, which they have just paused. They put it on hold because they don't seem to be able to make the financial numbers work. You'll be aware that the contract for difference auction for the next round of offshore wind, there were no bidders, simply because the price of the government is prepared to pay in terms of subsidy from us, the taxpayer, for that megawatt unit is simply not high enough to convince people to build. So I suspect there are some really significant problems going on in the sector, and I suspect it means higher prices for consumers if we're going to see those wind farms built in the future. Obviously, the giant pylon lines down our coastline is predicated on all the offshore stuff getting built. There is no update yet from National Grid in terms of the Alford substation proposal. We are waiting it. We've been waiting it for a few months now. I suspect the intention is still to come forward with that proposal and with a pylon line, not just through Lincolnshire, but also the one through the whole of East Anglia, There, all the MPs are campaigning against it. All the county councils have opposed it. I will not, in any sane version of events, think of a way we could recommend a giant industrialisation of the Lincolnshire coastline, destroying our tourism sector and the beauty of our county. But let's see what they bring forward, when they bring it forward, and if they bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mrs Julie Kelly, have a question for Councillor Richard Davies, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Richard. Oh, sorry, Councillor Davies. Over the last few years, and associated with COVID, we've all witnessed an increase in home delivery takeaways by companies such as Deliveroo and Just Eat. This has caused a major change to the use of our pavements and pedestrian areas. Many cyclists, seemingly unaware of other pedestrians, pedal like fury to get to their destination as soon as possible. The safety implications of this are obvious. We are not alone as a county. A recent Tonight programme highlighted this right across the country, emphasising electronic bikes as a further problem. Our highways are regulated, our pavements are not, and I think it's become like the Wild West, to be quite honest. So, Councillor Davies, what could we do as a county to try and bring this higher up the agenda? Because it is a nationwide problem, but I think it's becoming increasingly dangerous. And I just walking down Lincoln High Street was nearly knocked over. There's no sign of, there's no number plates, so there's no way so that you can actually identify these cyclists. I'm not saying 100% of them are completely irresponsible, but there is a large proportion of them that actually are, and I think we need to recognise that this is becoming an increasing problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Just small correction, I completely agree with your concerns. Pavements that are, most pavements are public highways, so they are regulated in the same way the roads are. They're just classed as for different usage. The reality is, I believe that riding a cycle on a pavement is an offence. It's a police can, if they choose to, enforce it. Unfortunately, they don't with so many things. You can park on a pavement by and large though, and there is regulation coming in around that called Chapter 6. However, in terms of cycling, I don't think there's much we can do other than to lobby for improvements, and I think it's something that Lincolnshire Police ought to be paying more attention to. Again, like a lot of the issues that get raised to us by residents, it's not particularly sexy, it's not particularly exciting, it probably doesn't need a fancy operation and a helicopter, it needs a few more police officers just out. And I've seen exactly the same thing you talk about in the pedestrianised area of Lincoln, and actually in the marketplace in Grantham it can be a problem as well, because you're not expecting to see a bike coming towards you. I believe in terms of electric bikes, I don't think you're allowed to ride them on the road or the pavement at all if you own it. I think there's a strange loophole about being able to rent it, but equally dangerous, and they do go at some speed. We first saw, I think, problems around delivery vehicles when Amazon rose to the fore, and we started to see a lot of kind of vans and things parking on our residential streets temporarily, and that still remains a problem. But you are right, the Deliveroo style is also problematic. I do think it's one of those things, it doesn't need anything particularly big doing other than just police officers out and about a little bit more, capturing what's going on and catching a few people. Because people learn. If they know somebody who works for the same company as them has been caught riding on the pavement, they'll think twice about doing it themselves. It's quite straightforward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ashley Baxter for Councillor Richard Davey.
Thank you, Chairman. Ever popular Councillor Davies. At an earlier meeting, I asked a question about mineral extraction in the division of Deacon's Western Rural, which I represent. One of the am I still on? Yes. One of the many reasons why quarries continue to be unpopular in our area, and probably in most areas where there are quarries, is the associated additional traffic and heavy goods vehicles. The villages in my areas, particularly Baston, Gretford, and also Langtoft in the neighbouring division, are literally losing sleep due to the uncomfortable levels of HGV movements from quarries, including subcontractors and also for many other industries using HGVs as a shortcut or a way through. Parish councils and residents have repeatedly asked for traffic regulation orders to impose weight restrictions within the villages to discourage and decrease the noise, danger and nuisance of HGVs in the villages. I realise that it's difficult to enforce weight restrictions, but it is impossible to enforce a weight restriction TRO if it doesn't exist. Will you please join me in exploring with the parish councils what is needed to expedite, at least for consideration of traffic regulation orders?
Yes, very happy to do that. I know Baston and Langtoft well, stood and seen it, particularly those accesses, the crossroads onto the A15 there, are really problematic just from a safety perspective, let alone the noise. We're doing some good work around HGV management. We're doing some work around freight and freight stops. We've done some good work with the Lorry Watch scheme to try and get freight operators to be more respectful of residents, because very often they're not, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. Very happy to explore TROs, but as so often I find myself saying, to add an element of realisation and expectation management, TROs do not apply to vehicles that could be classed as travelling locally. So it's very unlikely, for example, I forget the name of the street that goes horizontally through Baston, where you've got on the east side where all the quarries are, it's very unlikely that a TRO would be enforceable against those vehicles joining the A15 in the middle of the village, because they just don't apply locally. We can absolutely look into it. For me, I think part of the planning process needs to work better in respecting needs of communities. I don't think it's unreasonable to have an enforceable travel plan that says to people, please don't drive your lorries through the middle of the village, find another way. That needs to be taken account of as part of the planning process. And I think responsible quarry operators, and we need the materials, we need the jobs, we need all that comes with it, ought to be taking that on board far more easily. And I have heard, and I know you've raised it previously, that very often they use the exception, oh, well, it's, you know, third-party subbies and things don't know. Well, that doesn't cut it. We wouldn't allow that in any other supply chain for somebody to say, well, my guy didn't understand. Well, you're the operator, you're responsible, you've got a travel manager in place as a legal person, you should be running it better and from more aware of the needs of the community. But we'll very happily look at it, but I would hesitate against thinking a TRO is going to fix it, not least of which we need the police to enforce, vis-a-vis the previous conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander Morn, you have a question for Councillor Patricia Bradwell.
Thank you, Chairman. The Government recently announced that from September 2025, working parents of children aged 9 months and upwards will be entitled to 30 hours free childcare per week, right up to their child starting school. This is a huge boost for working families across Lincolnshire. However, this will potentially require a substantial increase in the number of nursery places. So, Councillor Bradwell, can you please share with the Council the work being undertaken now with colleges, schools and employers to ensure that Lincolnshire will have the skilled workforce required in place by September 2025 to meet this demand? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and obviously this is a key piece of work that we are delivering in children's services, because we know lots of parents now need to work, both parents need to work. We are confident that families will welcome the measures announced by the Chancellor to make childcare more affordable. And as you've just stated, the government-funded rates for delivering education places will be uplifted. It will start in September 2023, but they will be fully uplifted by September 2025. And we are confident this extra investment will support the sector and recruit staff working in the sector by offering better salary scales, which we know at the moment are quite low. And that's why often providers do have a problem with employing the amount of staff they need. The extra investment will support high quality provision being delivered in Lincolnshire, and our early years and childcare support team will have established a recruitment and retention working group and identified several measures to support this further, including a development of a range of marketing materials and series of films to promote the career in childcare. These have been all published widely across the county, including involvement with schools, colleges, job fairs, childcare providers and our children's centres. In addition, the work we are going to do locally. The government has introduced a childminder startup scheme to assist with costs of registering to become a provider, because we know that lots of parents, although many want to send their children to preschool, lots of people do want to have a different sort of childcare. So again, that campaign will be launched in early 2024. So the team are using local and national actions to update our strategic plan, and we are aimed at delivering the government's ambitious childcare reforms, because we do realise that actually most parents probably now, you know, do need to work. So this is a key thing for our early years team over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know firsthand from my own grandchildren's situation. And last and finally, I know we're out of time. It's only just Councillor Rob Kendrick has a question for, and finally, Councillor Richard Davis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief as we've run out of time. Concerns have been raised with me concerning the condition of the B1202 from the B1188 at Metheringham over the Heath to the A15. I'm aware there's been a lot of jet patching done recently, but there are still concerns over conditions of some parts of the road. I just wonder if Councillor Davis could look into that for me, please. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, very happy to.
Thank you. Short and concise. Okay, right. Now we'll move to item 8, which is the review of financial performance 22-23. There's a report that's been circulated by the Executive Director. And this now has one or two additions to it. So first of all, there is an additional amendment by the Conservative group, and there is an amendment that's been submitted by the Independent group. So I plan to deal with this as outlined in the order of proceedings and have one debate. And I therefore move, and I will be as quick as I can to go through the formalities, that there be one debate on the motion and that the Independent group amendment, and therefore the following council procedure rules by temporary suspending for the duration of debate 13.6b, c, d and e, and 13.10b. And that Councillor Martin Hill, Leader of the Council, in introducing and moving the motion and in responding to the debate, be allowed to speak for 6 minutes at A and F in the order of proceedings. That the proposer of the amendment listed be allowed to speak for 6 minutes at C on the order of proceedings. That the councillors seconding the motions will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes at B and D on the order of proceedings, or at E on the order of proceedings if they reserve the right to speak later in debate. That the other speakers should be allowed 3 minutes each at E on the order of proceedings, and that there be no further amendments to be moved. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dilks. Can we now go to a vote on the temporary suspension of council procedure rules? All those in favour, please show. Okay, that's clearly carried. Anybody against? No, and no abstentions. Okay, so the rules of debate then. I wish to remind members about the rules of debate as set out in the rules of 13.5 and 13.9 of the council procedure rules, which have not been suspended. These are set out in paragraphs 1 and 2 of the order of proceedings. Except as set out in rules 13.5 and 13.9, councillors are allowed only to speak once during the debate. Therefore, the motion and any amendments will proceed as one debate. Councillor Hill, would you like to move your motion, please?
Thank you. I would like to move the motion. Hopefully I won't need 6 minutes to do it. So I'd first likely to, before I start in actually talking about some of the detail on this, I think it's quite interesting we're having this debate compared to what's happening in many parts of the country, where we hear that Birmingham City Council is effectively bankrupt. We hear that other councils are in severe financial problems all over the country, and they're talking about how they're going to manage their in-year overspend and so on and so forth. It's a very good place to be, that we're in a position I'm not standing here talking about all the measures we've got to do to keep within budget. We're actually looking at a situation where there is an underspend, and we're really just going to start debating how we're going to deal with the financial future as we move forward. So I think all of us need to pat ourselves on the back, because that's not just luck. That's the fact that we have been, as this council, have been very clear about going straight hard on making sure that we find the savings, we reduce waste. So I'm not saying we're unique, and I think we also need to remember we are one of the worst funded and one of the lowest council tax councils in the whole country, yet at the same time we are now in a position that we are in a happy position of looking at what we're going to do with this additional money. So I think that's a credit not only to the political decision making, but also to the way that officers have managed this and our finance team as well. So you might ask why there's a large underspend here of over about £12 million. I think in terms of day-to-day services, that was about £2 million, and considering the size of our budget, that is actually a good result, because we don't want to be overspending. We want to be, ideal word is a slight underspend. The reason we got extra is following our council budget meeting in February, the government then announced some extra money, which we weren't expecting, to do with business rates and pressure. So like all the other councils, we got a surprise bonus, if I can call it like that. Then there was also some other monies which government made available, and there was also more money made available because of a better situation in terms of business rates and council tax income. That very properly our finance team were very cautious about what might happen. So we are in this very, very happy position, and all I can say, I can't underestimate the contrast we find ourselves in with the majority, I would say, of other councils, and we will live within our means, even though, as I've said before, we are one of the worst funded and have one of the lowest council taxes in the country. So that's where we are. As I've said before, you'll see, I won't go through all the details of where the money's gone, but obviously the 1% carry forward for each department, they will decide how that is spent, and then there's other sort of tidying up issues, but also the writing off or the dealing with the overspend in two small areas. So that's where we are with that. Of course, that does mean there is more money available, and surprise, surprise, there are two amendments now. There will be a difference, I think, in terms of how we use the extra money which has become available to us. So in terms of the Conservative amendment, which hopefully has been circulated and you can all see, the net effect of that is that we have got more money around. So what we're saying is that we are saying that all of that money, and we want to be very specific about that, all of that money at the moment that we think's around will actually go to highways. So we don't want it to go into the development pot and just sort of sit there and be doing this, that and the other. So we are clear that highways is the major problem for us in this county, and the Conservative Council has consistently put extra money in over the last 4 years, in addition to our regular funding. I suspect if you add it all up, we're over £50 million extra on top of the annual thing. But we never can do enough, and as we know for sure, the roads in our county, due to mainly the fact that most of them are not that well built, and we have had funding problems in the past. Although this will go some way towards improving what we do with our highways, in particular on the more rural areas, is not to pretend that this money will suddenly solve the problem. And as we know, I know when I look at some of these schemes that come forward the cost of major reconstruction of highways, this money wouldn't get you many miles of total reconstruction. So it's an addition to what we've already been provided, and we want as a Conservative group to be specific about that this money should go to highways. Having said that, we're also very clear that all our services, there are no services that we can identify where there is a crisis of funding. Of course, we could spend money all over the place, left, right and centre, but I don't think that is where we need to be, because the reason we're in this strong financial position is because, yes, we've had to be careful, and we've had lots of debates over the years about other people saying, well, other parties saying, well, let's spend this here, let's spend that here, let's use the reserves for this, that and the other. And that, although it would give you a short hit, short-term positive hit, gives you a very long-term negative hit. So we've stood our ground on that, and I make no apologies for that. And I certainly do not make any apologies for the fact that this spare money is going to be used for highways maintenance. Can I just say, we'll obviously have a debate about.
I think we're getting there on time, Leader.
Sorry?
I think we're getting there on time.
We're on time, so I'll stop now, and I will come back with it.
Well, we make proceed prudence.
Thank you.
I think
So I'd
is
like
what
to
you're
move
describing.
the Conservative amendment, please, and hopefully it will be seconded.
Thank you. Yes, do I have a call upon a seconder, please?
You go. I'm Smith. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to support the recommendations and the Conservative amendment. And I reserve my right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
Naturally. Thank you. Councillor Dilks, would you like to move your amendment, please, for us? Thank you.
If I can get up. Thank you, Councillor Hill, for your words. I welcome the fact, of course, that we are able today to choose what we do with more than £10 million in underspends on last year's budget. That is a good place to be in. We could do what we're being asked to do in the recommendation before us, or at least as the change recommendation that's come in this morning, to put all this money into the entire 10 million bonus into more tarmac. And I understand the pressures on tarmac. You know, I campaigned and I still campaign on highways and roads issues. It was originally going to go into meet the development fund to meet the council's priorities as they emerge, and I note that it's now, you know, you have now said and been specific, yes, it's going to be all for highways. Or we could choose to use some of that money, this windfall, to meet some of the priorities that we already know have emerged. For example, I just mentioned a few: children's mental health following the pandemic, sponsoring 1 or 2 PCSOs, as I mentioned earlier, in each district of the county to help fight crime and antisocial behaviour. Or maybe a boost to deliver quick climate change mitigation wins. Those are all valid. And that's not spending money all over the place, I've got to say, Councillor Hill. Our amendment focuses on another priority that has already emerged that would make a real difference to the lives of hundreds of priority young people we're elected to represent, whose families right now are struggling to face the national cost of living crisis. Rocketing mortgages, rising rents, staggering heating and food bills caused by the highest interest rates and highest inflation for a generation. I commend the excellent holiday activities and food programme run by Lincolnshire County Council that currently provides free access to clubs in the school holidays for reception-age children to Year 11 pupils who are in receipt of benefits-related free school meals. Over summer, Christmas and Easter holidays, it offers high-quality experiences for these children, healthy and nutritious meals, physical activity, a lot of fun for the kids, meeting new friends, socialising, new skills, and so on, enjoying happy, healthy holidays that they wouldn't ordinarily have. It really does make a great difference to the children who benefit from it, from the scheme, forgive me. How the programme is actually has grown is a great story too. For example, during the Easter holidays last year, 2,345 children and young people attended those activities. Earlier this year, that figure rose to 3,935. That's more than 1,000 extra priority children were able to help, a 62% increase. There's been big rises too in those able to attend the summer and winter programmes. Research shown the value of this programme. It can school holidays can be a pressure point for some families, particularly those from low-income households who are more likely to experience unhealthy holidays. In terms of nutrition and physical health, are more likely to experience social isolation and be less ready and able to face the new school term when they go back following the holidays, especially after summer. So we can all agree with the Deputy Leader, Councillor Bradwell, who said in the executive statement earlier this year that the feedback from parents, schools and young people themselves shows what a great difference, a real difference, the programme is making. But here's the rub. There's 24,609 children and young people across Lincolnshire who receive benefits-related free school meals. That means across the county, the vast majority of children, the vast majority of children that the programme's actually aimed at don't benefit from it at all. Imagine the impact any of us could make to people's lives with 10 million quid. But we're not asking for 10 million. What we're asking is just 1 million of the 10 million available, just 10% of it, leaving 90% or £9 million to do other things with. Hang on. The original recommendation was simply to put all the 10 million into a reserve, which was to be used as priorities emerge. As you said, you now want to put it all into highways. We've done the research and can tell you that extra, and I appreciate what you say that you won't get many miles with that 10 million quid in tarmac, but an extra million would allow us to extend the excellent holidays, activities and food programme to a further 1,200 children who've already been identified by us, the County Council, as priority needs kids. A third of them with special educational needs who are not currently able to access the programme. That leaves £9 million bonus for the development fund. Personally, rather than just say all for highways, I would like to see executive members of this council work with their appropriate scrutiny committees, including highways, in the coming weeks to discuss how best that extra £9 million, when we've decided the 1 million today, can be used. Yes, last sentence, sir. That £9 million can be used to meet further known priorities that will make a real difference to people's lives. So for a start, I'm asking for your support today for our amendment. As a compromise position, I move the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dill. So,
thank you.
Is there a seconder, please, for this? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to. I'd like to formally second the amendment and reserve my right to speak later in the debate.
Thank you very much. That's noted. I'd like to invite councillors now wishing to speak to indicate by raising their hand, and hopefully we'll have them in order. I've got Councillor Lee, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to endorse everything that Councillor Dilks has said. I do agree, you know, I mean, we've got this money, but let's be honest, they've not given us some gift from heaven. They cut our money, didn't they? You know, they've only just given us some back. We shouldn't really be grateful. It makes me smile as well when people talk about the lack of police officers and other things, because, I mean, which government cut it, you know? But we'll go back to the motion. I agree with everything that Phil says. The Holidays Fund is a really good initiative, and if you represent an area similar to the area that I represent and live in, where there are places where there is deprivation, you see the real difference that this kind of a scheme makes. I don't know how many people in this chamber have areas of deprivation within their divisions, but you certainly see it in mine, and to extend that scheme, it's got to be a positive initiative. And we're talking about £1 million here out of a considerably much larger sum. I agree that we do need to spend some money on highways. That's fine, you know, we all get lots of highway stuff in our inboxes. That is what people want. But I'd remind people as well, because there's a phrase in this motion about social priorities. A year ago, I raised the fact in this chamber that we'd had citizens' advice come to a scrutiny meeting, and they told us that they could only answer about a third of the calls that they get. And since then, that position got worse when we had the update in May. And I know we're going to have something to scrutiny in October, but I'm talking about what we've had already. I've been repeatedly pushed back and told to go away and come back later because we might be able to give you a little bit more money for them. And yes, I know they're not just our responsibility, but we're the ones that have got actually a pretty substantial underspend, and I've got some money that we could give them because they make a huge difference as well. They counsel people on debt management, they counsel people on benefits and helping them back into work. And I'm afraid the phrase about a short-term positive hit, I don't think that that kind of help is a short-term positive hit. I think it makes a real difference to people's lives. So I would support what is in the motion that Councillor Dilks is proposing, because I think, yes, we do give some money to highways, but there are so many other social priorities. And I'm sorry, it's not just roads that matter to people's lives. Lots of things matter, and we need to be much more fair about allocating the money that essentially belongs to the people of this county. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Matthews.
Thanks very much. What an interesting motion this is. I raised this matter through Children's Services, Children's Scrutiny 2 years ago, because I was very concerned that we weren't getting full engagement. I had 3 inquiries from residents in my ward, and I raised that as a result. I attended some of the HAF workshops today and monitored them, and they were actually all undersubscribed. So, many were full, but some were undersubscribed. I've not had any further complaint following my request that Mablethorpe and Sutton, which is the biggest area of deprivation in the whole county, be well served. And it has been enormously well served, but I haven't had any further concerns. And what I'm intrigued with is Councillor Dilks has told me that he's had contact from hundreds of children wanting this service in his area. And I'm just intrigued to see the list of the hundreds of children and the complaints that he's received, because I did receive complaints. We've had a fantastic service. It's been resolved by allocating the resource to where it was needed. And I would say our needs are very well met in Mablethorpe and Sutton-on-Sea through this scheme.
Okay, Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also wish to speak in support of the independent amendment. Yes, indeed, it's great that we have an underspend from last year that we can now have a debate about allocating. And I've no doubt that it is quite proper that a lot of it is spent on our terrible backlog of roads maintenance, and I'm sure that the people in my division will very much welcome that. But I'm also conscious of the fact that there are a lot of people who struggle with childcare during the school holidays, all the school holidays, not just the summer holidays, all school holidays. And this is a wonderful opportunity for this council to build on what is a success that we can be rightly proud of. The HAF programme, which has been introduced using DFE funding, has been a great success so far. It's high quality provision. Those of us who visited them are always impressed. It's high quality provision. It's a great help to the county's most hard-pressed families during the school holidays. But at the moment, as Councillor Dilks has said, it doesn't reach enough of the people who need support, who can benefit from the support during the school holidays. So, being able to have the opportunity to increase the number of places by just 1,200, and as you said, there's 24,000 children on free school meals, we're only going to add another 1,200 to the provision. And I don't accept the point that this is, by being very specific about this money, that this is a short-term positive hit which will have a long-term negative hit. I don't agree with that at all, because we're not taking money out of reserves to do this. We're doing something to enhance an existing successful scheme. We know that this money will be well spent, and we know that it will reach the people who will benefit from it. And so I heartily commend this to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Stephen Bunny.
Thank you. As some of you might know, I come from a fairly long Quaker family where we, as Quakers, we do look very much at consulting, talking, considering and looking for a compromise, if one can be found, which satisfies as many parties as possible. I too have looked at the HAF funding. I do appreciate that in some cases, including in my own division, not all the schemes were as fully occupied as I would have liked to have seen them. But that could have been for two reasons. One, because some of the people who live out in the further flung villages, the sticks as someone kept telling me yesterday about them, could actually not always get in to the projects which are being on offer in Market Raisin and areas. The other thing was that sometimes conditions were put in place which meant that they had to go all week or whatever and therefore weren't able to attend. I also felt that and agree that some areas we've got people who are in need but don't fall into the criteria. So I do think there's a lot to be done to improve that project and increase the availability of that project. And I think particularly at the shorter holidays actually. Last year I seem to think that Christmas it might have been a couple of days available but not for everyone. So I would like to see that there is a need for some money there. I like the idea that perhaps we look at how the rest of the money is spent, and I must admit that if I looked at my inbox, highways and so on is very important and would be well up the top of the list. Though I would like to think that we might discuss quite how highways might use that money. At the moment, the priority seems to be on roads, getting the carriageways right. But actually, for a lot of us, it is the pavements. Many people cannot get around because the pavements are in such poor condition and they don't seem to get as much attention. So I am looking towards that the discussion takes place on how this money is spent, that discussion is undertaken to make sure that it is spent in the best way possible, and for that reason I will be supporting the motion as put by the independents.
Thank you. Councillor Patricia Redwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really pleased that people do see how important the Holiday Activity Fund has been for families across this county. It does help, and this year we've delivered to 4,000 children and young people, and I know that is only a small amount, but you know, every one of our providers has been busy delivering that, as we said, several times a year. And there is other ways for HAF. It's not just HAF. We've got other ways of supporting families during holidays as well. So it's not just this one element. We've found that we do not currently have extensive waiting lists for activities. So, and we have been monitoring take-up and adjusting provision in different areas. We're using the allocated funding efficiently, and there's no evidence to suggest that there are significant unmet need. Not all eligible children want to engage in the holiday activity club, and we really can't, you know, make them. But we are really confident that our schools are promoting this to the right families, and where, you know, the children will actually benefit from coming along during the summer holidays. We also need to be mindful that providers to deliver these activities are not unlimited, and although over time we've been able to grow our provision year on year, an additional £1 million investment would not necessarily mean that we would be able to be in a position to open up more places, and we would not be able to have loads of providers who could grow and increase the provision as would be needed if we had another £1 million worth of funding. Building up the markets has taken time, and one-off funding, would not really provide sufficient time to grow that market. I'm satisfied that this is a successful scheme. We are making a difference to families and children across the county. It does not mean, though, that we could cope with more significant, quick expansion. In our highways, though, in contrast, being a member in a very rural area, are a matter of keen public interest. Every parish council I go to are constantly moaning about potholes because I'm in probably one of the most rural areas in the county. And residents tell us repeatedly that they feel this is an area that would benefit from enhanced investment. So therefore, although I'm responsible for children's services, and I think the HAF programme is a great thing for children to be able to participate in, I could not support the diversion of funding at this time, because I know that what we've got, the money that we've got, is providing a service across this county.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Alexander Moore? Oh, I beg your pardon. Councillor Woolley, who is running this meeting, please?
I'm sorry, I sat here and I saw a hand move, so I do apologise to you, Councillor Gibson.
Accepted.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I was very fortunate to visit one of the HAF programmes this summer, and I would very, very publicly like to thank Heather and her team, not only for arranging the visit, but also to reassure me of not only the quality of the provision by the provider, but also the quality of the work that goes on by our officers in making sure that provision is as it should be. It was second to none, and again, very publicly, please thank Geraldine, because she certainly enthused me with the way that, as it were, we do things. To see the children that were there receiving a healthy meal, to see them doing the various activities and the physical activity, it was great. However, and you can probably sense there was a however coming, the one bit that they couldn't do was around this tying up completely neatly the number of places with the number of children that actually turned up, because on the day that I visited, not all the children who had been there in the past or the previous day were turning up on the day I was there, through no fault of either the provider or indeed our officers. And so there is always going to be that element that not all places are taken up, but I think that we really, really must thank everyone concerned for the excellent job that, as usual, our outstanding children's services are doing. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, well noted. Thank you. Right, again, can I, Councillor Alexander Moore, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Listening to Councillor Lee, Councillor Cleaver, Councillor Dilks, you would be forgiven for thinking that Lincolnshire County Council doesn't support families across Lincolnshire, and that's the perception you're creating, Councillor Dilks. And I want to remind you. Well, thank you. And I would like to remind all members opposite that actually children's services were recently inspected by Ofsted with an outstanding result. And I think we should put that on record in this meeting, because we should be proud of the work that our children's services do to protect and support the most vulnerable children and families in Lincolnshire. So there is that support out there. Now, I made a promise to my electorate in 2021 that highways would be a political priority of this council. And I know that residents in Hoff Division expect me, as their representative, and my Conservative colleagues to make sure that we increase the investment in our local highway network. Councillor Davis will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think less than 7% of the revenue budget is spent on highway maintenance. In contrast, we spend a much larger proportion of our spend on supporting vulnerable families and children in Lincolnshire, and rightly so. But I won't be supporting the amendment today, because I feel with this unexpected underspend, we should be making sure that we honour the promise that we made as Conservatives in 2021 to invest more funding into our highway network, to ensure that we're delivering on the priorities that the public frankly voted 54 Conservative councillors to deliver for them in Lincolnshire. So I'll be supporting the substantive motion. Thank you.
Okay, now I understand Councillor Gibson would like to add to the debate.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
I've seen no issues with the independent amendment and understand the aim. However, I'm going to have to apologise to my opposition colleagues and say that my inbox is full of about 90% highways issues. I'll be happy to support the Conservative amendment that the money goes into highways. You'll not be surprised that I'll ask Councillor Davis and his team to keep South Holland in mind when looking at projects. And if he needs any ideas, I'm still looking for a £2 million bridge over the A60.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we're having a reasonable debate here. I've got 3 more people listed to speak, which I'm going to obviously undertake. And then after that, I will be coming to ask for right of replies by seconders. Yes, also, Councillor Whittington, I know how to run a meeting. So, Councillor Smith, next, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And before I begin my substantive remarks, just to add to Councillor Maughan's point around how much we do for those who are in need, this council proudly upped the amount we give to those who foster our children in need more in children's scrutiny. So we are helping the most vulnerable. As has been said, Chairman, my inbox is littered with highways issues constantly and drainage issues. Only yesterday I had 2 residents concerned they were going to be flooded due to long-standing drainage issues. This money is absolutely vital that it goes to highways, Chairman, so that those issues and issues around pavements, and Councillor Bunny is quite right, they seem to fall by the wayside slightly, but that is because actually we need more money in our highways team so they can invest in our pavements, so they can invest in our roads. And I will be proudly supporting the substantive motion, because the more money we can have into our highways, the better our roads, pavements and drainage can be for our residents. And as Councillor Maughan said, we were elected here on that promise as Conservatives, and I intend to fulfil my word and promise to my electorate.
Thank you. Councillor Key.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to support this motion by the Conservative group because I met recently with a resident who was a wheelchair user in one of my villages and saw for myself some of the work that needs doing on the pavements, and it reminded me actually when Councillor Bunny mentioned pavements. And my village where I live, Heckington, we also have a lot of pavements that need repairing. The concentration has been on potholes, but not everybody drives a car, and a lot of people depend on the pavements to get about in their village. And this particular village, with the wheelchair user, I saw for myself 2 simple jobs would transform his life, and I saw that for myself. So I will definitely be supporting this motion because that's what I stood for at the last election. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackie Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. Because of the way the debate is going, I need to declare an interest because some of my grandchildren access these services. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tom Dyer.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think my colleague, Councillor Bradwell, has covered off the opposition amendment, but I'd like to speak in support of the Conservative amendment to this budget, which yet again sees us investing even more funding into our highways. Whilst the independents in South Kesteven can't get a leisure centre operational, and they probably never will, or put any funding into it, here we are, the Conservative County Council, continuing to invest in our highways. And that public infrastructure is absolutely critical. I've been lucky since I was elected in 2021 in Waddington and Highcombe East. We've had millions of pounds invested across my division. And we also have this small new road as well that's in the pipeline, the North Highcombe Relief Road. That's circa £200 million worth of investment locally, mostly in my patch. So I could still do with some more funding in Waddington and Highcombe East, though, Councillor Davis. So I won't stop just because there's 200 million being spent. But it's not just about my patch, it's about the rural roads across Lincolnshire that are in desperate need of repair. And I hope to see that funding goes there. I think Councillor Pepper, you've got significant issues with rural roads in your patch, so I hope that they spread out, and Councillor Bowkett as well, so spread out across Lincolnshire, because this funding is absolutely essential. And this recent by-election that we've had, I think I've seen on social media the Liberal Democrats complimenting how great LCC are at repairing potholes when issues have been repaired. And I think that just goes to show, actually, that even opposition councillors across this chamber recognise how great LCC is when it comes to highways. And I'm so pleased that we're continuing to invest in those highways as well. So, unlike other councils, we're getting on with the job and delivering. So that's something we should all be very, very proud of on this side of the chamber.
So, Councillor Dyer, that's 2 Ps, one for prudence and one for pride. Thank you. Councillor Austin, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a very difficult decision, isn't it? Really, we'd spend our money on both. However, we haven't got that much. Ironically, this morning, I came a different way. Instead of coming my usual main route, I chose the rural route, which is shorter. And I came via Chapel Hill and roads like that. It was the driving equivalent of hell. It was awful. And if there were children living, it's very isolated, some of those areas, places. If you were children living there, well, you wouldn't be able to get to the holiday activities because the roads are so bad. So I think my experience this morning is not just the main roads. These fen roads where, you know, I'm afraid it's just a problem with roads over the peat and the fens, but they need money to make them even passable. So I shall be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whittington, I understand seconder you'd like to
Yes, thank you very much indeed.
summarise.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Chairman. I think Councillor Hill made a very, very good point right at the start of his speech. We're in a very fortunate position here in Lincolnshire. You know, the litany of councils that have recently gone into financial difficulties, Birmingham, Slough, Thurrock, Croydon, etc., and now we hear the Derbyshire County Council are in trouble as well. And according to the CIFA magazine, Public Finance, and an awful lot more local authorities that potentially could be on the verge of issuing a Section 114 notice effective bankruptcy. So we're in a great position here in Lincolnshire as a result of sound financial and prudent management by the Conservative groups over the past 2 decades. So the reality is, though, of course, that 10 million as a proportion of our annual revenue budget is a very, very, very small percentage indeed. I think great credit actually goes out to all of our finance staff from the director down for the very, very sound way they manage our finances. If you look through the report, you can see that we're satisfying all of our prudential indicators. With all of our key performance targets we're meeting. There's been a recent CIFA report that's demonstrating the sound financial management here. So we have this underspend, and the question is what we do with it. Now, I represent the Earlsfield estate in Grantham, which is probably, I'm not going to get into what's the most deprived part of Lincolnshire, but the Earlsfield estate must be up there with them. And I have to say, I have received nothing in my inbox, no emails from residents regarding HAF or their inability to access a HAF scheme. And I think that was borne out by the comments that Councillor Bradwell made, which seems to be that at the moment, you know, we are meeting the demand. We can't force parents, we can't force children to attend these schemes. You know, it seems to be that those who want have been able to attend. On the contrary, my inbox, like I imagine lots of councillors here, is absolutely jam-packed full of highways issues. In 2016, we did a survey and 71% of people said highways was their #1 priority. This was backed up in the 2021 election by, it has been alluded to, the Conservatives winning 54 seats on a promise to make highways one of our top political priorities. You know, highways is the #1 issue that residents raise with us, and therefore I fully support the full £10 million being spent on highways, because that is what our residents are telling us the money needs to be spent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Baxter, are you wanting to exercise your second?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm always told not to rise to it, but I will rise to the comments about the Deepsons Leisure Centre. As you know, most of the people who failed to maintain the Deepsons Leisure Centre over the last decades have been removed from office at South Kesteven, and the new administration is working closely with the County Council, and thanks to Councillor Martin Hill and Councillor Bootroyd particularly, we're making progress, and I wouldn't want to jeopardise that for the sake of a silly argument in a council chamber. Other Conservatives lost their seats in 2021, partly because of the state of the county's highways. And I think on our return, Councillor Hill acknowledged that highways was one of the big issues why so many Conservatives lost their seat, and that why it has become a priority. And people rightly prioritise highways. However, highways is not the only crisis that we're facing, that our residents are facing across the county. And we need to beware of getting into a myopia where we only worry about highways, and we think that highways are the only things that people are worried about. For a start, we've got a climate change crisis. And the argument, what about China, is no excuse for not taking the action seriously in Lincolnshire and in the UK. And it is ironic that Councillor Davey is complaining about China when it was not that long ago that he went to China at taxpayers' expense to woo the Chinese. We have a biodiversity crisis. We have a cost of living crisis. We have an NHS crisis. As has been stated, we have a crisis of lack of police on our streets. It's not just highways. And if you're talking about highways, if you think it's unsafe for cars, then try riding a bike. It's no wonder the delivery drivers are taken to the pavements, because the roads are so dangerous, not just because of the other traffic, but because of the state of the roads. But it's not the only issue. And to say we're going to only, and this is a last-minute amendment, don't forget, we were relatively happy with the original let's put the money somewhere safe. But to say, right, we're going to exclude everything else we could spend the money on by putting it all into highways, I think is a mistake. And so we should be sharing that out, and we should be looking at the 2,000 children that we could be helping through the HAF fund. Yes, put half of it into highways, put some of it into highways, but remember, there are other issues to worry about besides highways. We're not just a highways authority. So please support the independent amendment. You don't have to vote just because the person next to you is voting one way, you don't have to vote that way. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hill, would you like to respond,
yes, thank you,
please?
I will be brief. It's about living up to your promises. I think Councillor Batcher was quite correct. We went into an election in 2021, commitment for highways was a priority. That's not a new commitment. We've had that commitment for years. And even when we suffered massive reductions in funding from the government, we still protected the highways budget. So it's not some Damaskene conversion. So I think it's all about, are you going to live up to your promises? 54 seats out of 70, I think, was pretty good. And I would say the 4 we did lose was more to do with specific circumstances about what the opposition was and where the Conservative candidate came from. So I don't agree with this analysis that we have never done the state of the roads. It's quite simple, this. When you actually distill this down, what we're saying quite clearly, highways are priority, and we're going to put an extra £10 million, no messing about, it's not going anywhere. The opposition is saying, oh, let's be vague, maybe some will go here, some there, and maybe we'll put some more money into half. Let's be clear here. What they're actually saying is quite clear, and the evidence is there. There is no unmet demand for a household activity fund. There is none. If there'd been hundreds of people if there'd been a massive queue of 100 people saying, well, I'd really like to get on that programme, but I can't, that might have been a different tale to tell. But so what you're actually saying is the same old story, we've got some money, we'll just dole it out, because we think it's a good thing. Because the demand is not there. And if it was, it might be a different tale. So you just basically come up with an idea which sounds good and sounds very cuddly. Let's just chuck some money at this particular problem and it'll be great. The demand will be met, and the demand will be met in future as this scheme continues. So I give that commitment, but at the moment there is no need. It all comes down to a matter of priorities and delivering on your promises. We've promised extra money on the highways, and we all put in our leaflets, I think everybody's leaflets said lots about highways. And recently I've seen leaflets in Lincoln where some candidates have said that the useless Tories aren't spending money on highways. Well, moment of truth now. We're delivering and we are spending money on highways. Are you going to commit to your commitments as well?
Thank you very much. So, can we now vote on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if I might just raise one point of information, if I may.
I will allow it.
I appreciate the the debate that we've had and all the comments have been made, but it is frankly wrong to say that there is no demand. The 1,200 people that we identified in the motion, or in my speech anyway, are children that have been identified by this council as priority needs children who would benefit from this programme. That's a fact.
I just need to correct Philip on that. Do you want to carry?
Happy.
No, the issue is, as I think Councillor Whittington eloquently told us, those people who have come forward, it's not a compulsory scheme, so those people who are eligible, the 24,000 children, they don't have to do it, and they could choose not to do it, and most parents choose not to, because they're probably making their own arrangements and don't want to be feeling that they're a cost to the taxpayer. So everybody who's expressed an interest in being on this scheme, and I think Councillor Matthews said the same, has been done. You can talk about unmet demand, and we hear vague figures. And I make a commitment, if the people anybody who comes forward in future who wants to be on this scheme and is qualified, they will be found a place. But what we don't need to do is just pluck £1 million out the sky and say, well, just in case. And that's always been the problem with why other councils, I have to add, aren't in the position we're in.
Okay, fine, thank you. Well, as I understand it, 5 million is in the budget, it's adequate, and that the demand is within the budget. Right, so can we try again? Can I ask that we vote on the amendment, please? Right, the independent amendment, yours was the first one. So, those in favour of the independent amendment? Thank you. 8. And those against that? Okay. So clearly that motion fails. Have I got any abstentions before?
Chairman, sorry, just a point of order. Councillor Overton's just come in. I just wondered whether she wanted to cast her vote on that. Thank you.
Yes, that's quite understandable. So, Councillor Overton, we were voting on the independent amendment. Which way will you be wishing to support or not support?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. That will make it 9 then. Thank you. Okay, so with that amendment that has now clearly been lost, we will go to the Conservative amendment, and can I have a show of those that are in favour of that one, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, my good soul. With that. My mathematicians at the side of me tell me that's 41. Have we got any abstentions then? No? Oh, 1 abstention, thank you. And those against? 7. Thank you. Okay, so the result is that the Conservative amendment is clearly carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9, opportunistically, we're going to talk about the political proportionality and allocation of seats to committees and subcommittees. We have, do I have a proposer for this, please?
Yes, Chairman, propose it. It's the balance of seats and the balance remains the same. So it's basically a housekeeping exercise.
Okay. And I understand that Councillor Lee is happy, comfortable to second this.
Yes, I'll second, Chair, and as nothing
Thank
has changed, so
Thank
that's fine. Yeah.
So are there any speakers? There are no speakers. So those in favour, please. Okay. Yes, that looks to be like everybody. Nobody against? Nobody against? No, and no abstentions, so that's clearly carried. So, moving on to item 10, the appointment of chairman and vice chairman of committees and subcommittees. We have a report from the executive director, which has been obviously circulated. And to move this, leader.
Thank you. Yes, just there's the same as before with 2 changes, please, Chairman. So, to replace the vacancy caused by over scrutiny. Vacancy by the sad death of by the retirement of Councillor Parker. I propose that Councillor Stokes becomes the new chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and that's to replace Councillor Stokes as who was the vice chairman of Public Protection. That is now proposed to be Councillor Paul Skinner. Apart from those 2, there are no other changes which I'm proposing.
Okay, fine. I did notice that you did correct the statement where Councillor Robert Parker is concerned. Councillor Bradwell?
Yes, I'd like to second that, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Thank you very much. Have I got any speakers? Oh, beg your pardon. Councillor Mariano.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make the point that scrutiny is about scrutinising the work of the Council, which is clearly led and driven by the executive, as correct. But that does mean that it's always much better, according to the advice that we get from the appropriate bodies, that you have the chairs of the scrutiny committees should be not in the same group. So it would be much better if it could be from the opposition group, not myself, but from the opposition group, would normally be a really good approach to have chairs of scrutiny, and particularly the overview and scrutiny. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to comment on the point that Councillor Overton has made, because actually that's a point that I've made at the other place across the road at the City Council. And I remember when Conservative councillors put such a proposal forward that an opposition councillor chaired what is the Performance Scrutiny Committee on that council, we were told no, and that was a matter for the controlling group. And they carried on having a Labour chair of that committee. So whilst you were speaking, Councillor Lee was nodding her head in agreement, when actually her own council in Lincoln doesn't adhere to that. But actually, I've got no doubt, wherever he is, that Councillor Stokes will do a fantastic job in that position as chairman of that committee. So I don't think we should have any doubt in that role, Chairman.
Thank you for your vote of confidence there. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry.
Point of order, Chair. I've been named, so I think it's fair that I can speak. The City Council isn't my council. I'd just make that point. I'm a county councillor, and I was elected as such. Thank you.
Yes, I know that as well, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to think when I stood in for Rob when he was unwell or otherwise engaged, I was more than capable of scrutinising my own party, and I have no bones in doing so, and I'm sure the leader and exec members can attest to that. So I take issue and umbrage with the insinuation that I was deficient whilst standing in Rob's stead.
Okay, fine. I also have heard that mark of excellence in my ears as well. Thank you. Right, so can we get to the vote on...
Point of order.
Hello, yes.
Sorry, I think I've been misunderstood, just so for clarity. No, there are no aspersions cast on any individual. I'm perfectly happy with people's qualities and skills to do the job. It's about perception, and this is a national guidance that I'm referring to. So, people in this council will do as they wish and vote as they wish, which is quite correct. But nevertheless, I'm just saying that the national guidance is that it's much better to have scrutiny committees not from the ruling group. Thank you.
Okay, so we note your clarity.
Wind up then, Chairman.
Thank you.
I suggest Councillor Overton talk to the person in front of her, because actually he's chairman of one of our scrutiny committees. Councillor Parker, he was an excellent chairman of Overview and Scrutiny.
He was.
And in the future, I'm sure there will be opportunities for non-conservatives. In this particular time, this is where we sit, and obviously as times move forward, and I fully take the point, but I don't want anybody to go away with the impression there are no opposition in Peter Councillor Dilks sits there as proof of it.
Okay, right, can we please, I think we're sort of there on that then, so can I go to vote please and ask for those that are going to support in favour of these appointments? Okay, so it's majority. Have I got any recordings for against? No, abstentions? I've got 2, 4, 6 abstentions. Thank you very much. Okay, so those appointments are now carried. So, appointments to outside bodies. Do I have a proposer for these, please? Leader.
I will do my best, Chairman. Certainly because obviously some of these are politically balanced, so I will say I think there's one Conservative issue to be resolved, so proposal from the Conservative group is that Councillor Skinner becomes the new representative on the police and crime panel. He seems to be having a good day today, isn't he, Chairman?
Well, I'll refrain from comment. Councillor Lee, you're quite all right, are you? Jolly good. Okay, so we need to just vote, I guess. Sorry, I have asked. No, so are you going to second this then, Councillor Bradwell?
Sorry, I'm new to this role. Yes, I'm going on Central
You're not
Links.
useless, but that's fine. Thank you.
Can we get,
right.
in future, Chairman, can we get a list so we're in order?
Yes.
We normally have a list somewhere. So this was agreed some time ago. So
Thank you for that. Okay, so please, in all Schedule 4, there was a list apparently. Right, so, sorry. Tricia, would you be comfortable to second?
I would.
Thank you very much. So can we now take a vote then on these outside bodies, that those who are in favour? Yeah. Okay, I reckon that's unanimous. Just for clarity, anybody against? No? And no abstentions? Okay, right. Oh, I beg your pardon, one abstention. It's noted.
May I just ask a question, please? I know down the bottom we have 3 substitute vacancies for the South East Links Joint Strategic Planning Committee. I have indicated that I would be very happy to take one of those places. I was actually the LCC representative, I think, on that committee, or one of the representatives anyway, when we actually wrote that strategy. So I'd be very happy to be back on it as one of those substitutes.
Okay, Councillor Austin, well, the vote's been taken, and I do thank you very much for putting yourself forward. I'm sure that will be taken into consideration and noted, please. So, appointments to the independent... sorry, I beg your pardon, again. Appointments of independent persons. Again, there's been a report by the Executive Director and Resources, and it's been circulated. Can I have a proposal on this, please? If you wish to.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Chairman. I don't know if I'm out of order to speak to the item. Perhaps it needs to be proposed first and then I should speak to it.
I think that would be correct, really. So, am I going to have a proposer, please, for the appointments? Thank you very much, Mrs Rawlings. Councillor Rawlings. Sorry? Yes, I know they are. Okay, fine. And to second this? Thank you, Councillor Brockway. So now then, Councillor Baxter, you are invited to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very pleased that this is an item on our full council agenda. I have checked with the officers that the role has been properly advertised, and the reason I ask that is because in another place where I'm a councillor, prior to May, the independent person was appointed without reference to full council and without an advert, which I found strange. So I'm just very pleased that it seems to be done properly here. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter, you and I have an agreement between us that we don't cross county and district matters. I'm upholding that, and I'm sure you are. So, those that are in favour, please. Thank you. Anybody against? No? Right, that's carried. Thank you. Right, item 13, changes to the constitution of the Lincoln Health and Wellbeing Board membership. I understand that there has been a reduction in numbers on this and that there isn't any political balance, and I understand that Councillor Sue Woolley is going to talk to that effect. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. And very quickly, before I go any further, can I apologise to both you and Councillor Moore, and possibly even Councillor Gibson as well, because you looked straight at me and I was waiting to speak and I certainly jumped the gun, so I do apologise to you all. This hopefully is pretty self-evident from what it says on the paper. In September 22, we agreed the terms of reference for the Health and Wellbeing Board. To cut a very long story short, when integrated care partnerships needed to be formed under the integrated care systems, it was recognised that with Lincolnshire having a coterminous Health and Wellbeing Board and a coterminous integrated care partnership, it would make perfect sense to have the same members on each board. As time has gone on, our health colleagues have felt more comfortable and we have a degree of maturity in the way that we work. And initially they had both the chief executive and chairman of each trust representing them on the boards. They now no longer wish to have that number, and so my proposal and my suggestion is, and this is with the agreement with our health colleagues, that 4 members from our the NHS come off the board and 2 members, 2 councillor members come off the Health and Wellbeing Board. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, fine, thank you. And I have a seconder for this? Oh.
Yes, I'd like to second that.
Councillor Wendy Palkett is seconding. Okay, so do we have, yes, we do have some debate. Councillor Dilks first, and then I'll see Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Not so much debate, just to ask a question, really. I wonder if Councillor Wood could tell us which of the 2 who are coming off, who's coming off the board, and can you confirm that all 6 nominations will now be coming from the ruling group? And is there not any place at all for at least one voice from the opposition? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Dilks. At this present time, it hasn't been decided who's coming off. All I would say to you is that the membership from the councillors is made up of those predominantly who have expertise in that area. So it's either the portfolio holder or indeed chairman of the relevant committees where it's appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'd just like to reiterate what I said at my very first council meeting back at the Epic Centre after the 21 election. I find the fact that the county council appointees to this committee are not politically balanced is completely indefensible. Thank you.
Okay, we note your comment. Okay, at that, I beg your pardon. Councillor
Thank you.
Overton.
There is legislation in the Local Government Act that requires fair representation on all committees. The only reason this one gets away with the law is because this kind of committee wasn't invented when that law was put in place. Nevertheless, I think the spirit of the law remains important. Where we have decision-making powers, they ought to be as representative as we can be of those who are elected, because those who are elected we expect to be representative of the public. And the point, ultimately, is that our decision-making takes into account the feelings, thoughts, ambitions, needs of people, of all people, right across the county. And that's why committees should be cross-party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I take your comments on board. However, I am here to propose that 8 is reduced to 6 with the changes of the Constitution, and regretfully, or for most people, they're probably quite pleased. I can't change the law either. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to support what my colleagues have said about this, about what's fair and what's right, because we've heard an awful lot this morning about Conservatives were elected in 2021, so we've got a mandate and we can do pretty much what we like. But last night, the mandate in one of our divisions collapsed and there were just 150 votes for a Conservative councillor. So I would suggest that perhaps you don't have the mandate that you think you have. Thank you.
I think in all seriousness, respect around the chamber needs to be upheld. Thank you.
I think, can we raise a point of order there? I don't recall any Conservatives saying those words. You said you've heard from Conservatives that we've said we can do what we like.
Enough. Right, now then, let's have the vote on this then, please. So can I find out or learn of those in favour, please? Okay, yes, his hand is up as well. Any against? Okay, fine, 6, thank you. So that's clearly carried. Sorry? Oh, I beg your pardon, is there any abstentions? No, okay, so that is clearly carried. That 8 now goes to 6. So, item 14, the overview and scrutiny annual report. Please, can I have a proposer? I understand this has also been circulated.
I'm very happy to propose the report, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. And I understand that Councillor Dilks.
I'm happy to second the report, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, have I got any speakers on this one? Nope. Okay, it's fine. So can I ask for a vote of support, please? Those in favour? Yep. Carried. Any abstentions? Anybody against? No, that's fine. Okay, so item 15, motions on notice submitted in accordance with the Council's Constitution. Now, I understand, Councillor Overton, that you have a motion that you would like to move. Here's your opportunity.
Thank you, Chairman. This motion is about trying to get our rivers, lakes and rivers cleaned up. Every day, our rivers and lakes and seas are being poisoned with sewage. It has got to stop. Local residents are concerned about human health and the impact on wildlife of regular wastewater discharge, including the untreated sewage into our local rivers and seas in areas like yours and my division. This has worsened on our watch. Like me, you may remember the European legislation coming in with a big clean-up of rivers, lakes and beaches, we thought. Remember the first salmon appearing in the Thames? I do. And I was heartened and proud to live in this country. The legislation was actually here in 1951, where it is an offence, a serious offence, to knowingly permit or enter anything in the water that is in the streams that are poisonous, noxious or polluting. So the legislation has been around some time. The Environment Agency has issued £150 million in fines since 2015. Yet, in total, water company executives have paid themselves nearly £27 million in bonuses over the past 2 years to 2021, while pumping sewage into waterways over 600 times a day, and 9,000 sewage warnings had to be issued in bathing areas. In 2021, the water companies were responsible for over 300,000 spills, during which raw sewage and untreated wastewater was dumped into aquatic environments for a total of over 2 million hours. Even those staggering figures are an underestimate, because over a quarter of the storm overflows had no monitors, or monitors that were faulty and non-functioning. I have one in my area that is not monitored, in my ward. The impact on people and wildlife is horrendous. Waterways choked with weed and fish dying in large numbers. And like me, you will also have seen the pictures of rivers with fish bodies floating belly up. People warned not to swim, not to go near the water, to keep pets and children away because they would be seriously ill. We have poisoned the air we breathe at times, and now we see we are poisoning the water we drink. You couldn't make it up. It gets worse. The government announced that 100,000 new homes were blocked because mitigation measures were needed to stop the additional sewage entering the already polluted rivers. Now, does that prompt the government to get on with cleaning up the waste immediately? No, they changed the law so that developers can carry on adding to that already serious and dangerous levels of pollution. It took the Lords to stop that this last week. Then we find that the watchdog, the Environment Agency, is regularly failing to check that the water companies are actually telling the truth about the pollution and their illegal dumping of sewage. Many audits have not been done. The government cut the funding significantly by half over a decade in 2010, up to 2010, allowed it to be privatising the water companies so that they self-report, but with big financial incentives for underreporting. Audits, as we said, from the Environment Agency are used by Ofwat to decide the price review, penalties and rewards. But in many cases, those audits were not done, sometimes for many years. Now we find that the law to protect the rivers and beaches are in place, are not protecting the environment. Laws may have actually been broken, is the latest thing in the news, because actually the laws were there all along. The Office for the Environment Protection suggests that the government, the Environment Agency and Ofwat may be failing to comply with environmental law. I move that this Council calls on our MPs, wastewater companies and the Environment Agency to take whatever action is necessary to stop raw sewage discharge at the earliest possible time. And we cannot leave it to central government. It is time for us in local councils to take matters into our own hands. Let's take a lead. Let's get partners round the table through scrutiny and get our rivers clean once more, for us and for the generations to come in Lincolnshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I think everybody in the chamber can agree with this. And as a person with the most up-to-date mandate, I can tell you people in the Lincoln Car Home Division are really concerned about this. It was one of the most popular things people ask me, what are you going to do about pollution in the rivers? by the water companies. And I'll say I'll do everything I can. So the first step is to support Marianne.
So you're seconding?
I'm seconding it,
Yes, fine, thank you. And you yeah,
got there.
just a bit worried that you're entering really into debate at the moment.
No, I'm seconding.
Okay, thank you
So,
very much.
as I was trying to tell you, Chair, this is a really what they call a hot button issue with the public. It doesn't matter what party they vote for. Loads of Tory supporters have told me that they're concerned about it. And they view it as a scandal, because it is a scandal. So I'm hoping that everybody in the room will listen carefully to what Marianne said and read the motion carefully, because it's very reasonable and it's all about public health. And as I say, Chair, I've spoken to hundreds of people in the last few weeks, and I've got very sore feet. And there's great public concern about this, because public health is the most important thing, and clean water is the most important thing. So, as I say, I hope everybody in the chamber will support the motion.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Colin Davey.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I don't think there's anyone in this chamber who doesn't agree that we need to protect and manage our natural environment for future generations and make sure we have the very best water quality and everything. I think what I'm going to propose is a rewording or some new words, because I think there is an action that we need to take rather than words and letters and all the other things that we often talk about. So what I'm going to propose is that the bold type in the motion is replaced with these following words. This council asks for this matter to be referred to the Flood and Drainage Scrutiny Committee, where this issue can be fully aired and actions available to this council can be determined, because I think that's the right thing to do. We need to have a proper scrutiny, and I remind all members, flood and drainage includes representatives from all our district councils as well. So we can have a wide discussion at that scrutiny committee and work out what actions we actually have as an authority that we could take. Because that's the most important thing, is doing something. Motions are fine, but you've got to actually have an action at the end of it. And I think that's the most important thing. So I'm going to move that would be an amendment to Councillor Overton's motion. And I'd invite my colleague, Councillor Ashton, to join me in seconding that. Thank you.
Okay, so where are we going? Councillor Ashton, you're going to support this. Is that correct?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm very happy as chairman of that committee to second Councillor Davies' amendment. As I think Councillor Davies has already covered, there's nothing in what you're suggesting here with which anyone would fundamentally disagree. We've just had the LGA coastal group over to Lincolnshire, to the Lincolnshire coast this week, and one of their really big issues is exactly this one. So would really like to see this come through the proper channel, through to that scrutiny committee, and happy to second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. So I've got councillors wishing to come into debate. So Councillor Stephen Bunny.
Thank you. I think what I was going to say has probably been curtailed a bit, and I would totally agree that we do need to discuss it, and I would support the amendment as posed by Councillor Davey. It would be great if we could do it on Monday next week, but I suspect it will have to wait to the following one. But, well, if we want positive action, we should be on it as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Councillor Skinner. Paul Skinner.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very supportive of the amendment, but there were some inaccuracies stated earlier. In actual fact, it was the local authorities that were running the water companies prior to the privatisation. Where I look out and I see that maybe the water companies are amongst the top 10 polluters, there's a lot more that we can do as individuals. You mentioned weed growth on the rivers. A lot of that is to do with household detergents and what's included in those. We can all actually make a big effort. And this campaign, although it's just come to the highlight in the papers, it's been run 10-15 years by Surfers Against Sewerage, Kayakers Against Sewerage. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Skinner. As the past chairman of Flood and Water Scrutiny, I fully concur and have the same sentiments. Councillor Dilks.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Ooh. Well, if I might say this all hit the fan, so to speak, last autumn, when almost all of Lincolnshire's MPs voted in the Commons against a motion to stop water companies dumping raw sewage into our rivers and seas. I hear what you say about, we've all got a role to play. We have. And I think one of the roles, as Councillor Murray has said eloquently, people are concerned about this, and that's why it is right that this council, takes a lead and says it's just not acceptable to be pouring tons and tons of raw sewage into our rivers and seasides, right? And after, when MPs sort of voted in the Commons, they were debating the Environment Bill. After clean water campaigners, and I think it was the organisation that you mentioned, were urging them to back an amendment on sewage that had been agreed in the Lords to place a legal duty on water companies to reduce raw sewage discharges into rivers. And under massive public and political pressure, the government earlier this year backpedalled somewhat and came up with a plan and targets to eliminate sewage dumping, really welcome, just in rivers, in English rivers, by, and they put a time date on it, it's in 28 years' time, in 2050. No wonder people are saying, to me and to others, it's too little too late. I shouldn't have to wait until I'm 99 years old before our rivers and seasides are not treated as sewers by the water companies, and before me and my children and my grandchildren risk their health by swimming or risking swimming in our beautiful rivers and seasides being polluted by raw sewage. We have a responsibility to do something, and even if it's just speaking up and lobbying those who can do something about it. So on that, I certainly welcome the well, it's not an amendment as such, as it's an addition. It is an amendment, but I think it's an addition in addition to the things that Councillor Overton is suggesting, and I welcome that addition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richard Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 3 brief points on this. I mean, I agree with the subject matter, but I would just ask, if this is going to scrutiny, then every council has its right to scrutinise in its own way, but we can always work together. And I'm surprised that Councillor Mrs Overton does not recognise the fact that we actually secured at North Kesteven Anglian Water attending not 1 but 2 scrutiny meetings, and we've actually got a promise from them to actually come back to actually tell us what improvements they've made, and they have to tell us what the condition is going forward, so that information, scrutinies could work together. That's why I say I'm being no mention of it. There was a mention by Councillor Mrs Overton, which I think we have to watch out for legalities. She mentioned that they were poisoning our drinking water. Now, I don't believe that any of our drinking water has actually failed any environmental tests that way, and that's something that we perhaps should watch, that we're saying those kind of things. Yes, they're pouring effluents into the rivers, but they're not poisoning the drinking water because it's cleaned up before we drink it. So
yes, I'm sure Councillor Overton will agree with me that that correction, thank you very much, is good standing.
And my third point is, if it is coming to scrutiny here, then there was mention earlier about making sure that there are opposition members in relevant places on scrutiny, but just can you be aware that on this subject matter you might just cause some marital strife, because at the NK scrutiny meetings I was allowed to attend by the chairman, because I've been very vocal with regards to clean water over the years, spotted some, shall we call them, mistakes that Anglian Water had made in their presentations, and pointed out their mistakes to them to make sure they're corrected. And following that scrutiny, apparently I was criticised by another Councillor Overton for being too hard on Anglian Water. So just before you take Anglian Water on, just make sure who's in attendance at your scrutiny meetings.
Okay, your points are noted, and your sentiments with Anglian Water are probably are in my heart.
Point of order.
Thank you.
You can do it. Yeah, you do it.
Point of order, Chair. Earlier, you said that you'd got some. I don't know what you were talking about, but there was some sort of arrangement about cross-district, county references. I have no problem with people referring to county and district and city and whatever else. But what is the rule? Are we allowed to or not? Is it only me that's going to get told off if I mention South District and
Excuse
District
me,
Council?
I was not telling you off.
Well, what were you saying then,
I
sir?
was referring to a private arrangement that you and I have had when I was a district councillor, and I don't wish to go into any further debate, and I had hoped it had been upheld as being two good gentlemen.
Let me tell the Chamber that I have no idea what you're talking about.
Fair enough.
Not for the first time.
Right, who wants to come in? Who? Councillor Hill, please.
Just in support of you, Chairman, I'm going to quote Rob Parker, actually, because actually this is a quote many, many years ago, and actually when Rob was leader of the council. I hear what's been said about that, but he was very right. He said, when you sitting, if you're a twin hatter, when you sit in this council chamber, you are a county councillor, you're nothing else. When you sit in your district council, that's the same. But I think over the years, some people have talked as if they are just a district councillor. You are here, you're elected as a county councillor, and that's, I think, was very, very good advice. And it's something, I think, it's a legacy advice that I pass on his behalf.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's just get back to debate then. I've got Councillor Kevin. Oh, sorry.
Just a point of order about the drinking water. I want to make it clear, I did not say that anybody was poisoning our drinking water. What I said, that they were poisoning the water we drink. The water from the rivers goes in through the treatment works and then comes out into what we drink. Therefore, we're not poisoning the drinking water. I never said that, but they are poisoning the water we drink. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'll get back to debate eventually. Councillor Kevin Clark, please. Order.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad this motion has been brought forward today.
Thank you.
But as a general rule, I'm slightly confused that companies, water companies, can make a profit, they can pass it to the majority of it to the shareholders, then go to the government and ask for funds to update the system. To me, this shows how well privatisation, a utility section works. Or then again, is it working? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. Very quickly, I'm very pleased that this motion has come forward because in my division we have a situation where the local sewage works isn't coping and we're having tankers going back and forth day and night. And initially, Anglian Water were very slow to engage, but I have to take my hat off to them. Once they got into it and understand the needs, they have been very good and have gone to the extent of starting to volunteer in the community. So I'd be very keen to see this going forward. Good motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. To be honest, this comes as no surprise to me. When you privatise utilities such as gas, electricity, water, the main signal that sends is that you're wanting that industry to generate profits. And what Kevin has just said is the profits doesn't go back into the industry to invest or to make it better. It goes into shareholders' pockets in terms of dividend payments and chief executive hikes in wages. So this has been going on and on and on for a long time. There's been no tight regulation by the regulatory bodies. And what I actually find increasingly galling is what Kevin has just said, that this has been going on for 10, 15 years. We made it worse when we left Europe because we were seen as the dirty man of Europe in relation to the quality of our beaches. And then what you get on television now is adverts by Anglian Water saying that they're doing the best for us and aren't we all very pleased? And I think the whole thing is just completely predictable and absolutely unethical and disgusting. And the fact that they are coming back and expecting us to pay is just immoral. So that's my view.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly. I think in all essence, it's not, to be fair, it's just not Anglian Water, it's all water companies you were referring to.
I think there is a point of order here. I don't want to carry this on because it really time we went.
Thank you.
there actually been more investment in infrastructure since they were privatised. And what's happening is a legacy of lack of infrastructure when it was in the public sector. So this idea that they're not investing enough, they're actually investing more than when we had Labour governments and other governments. They did nothing. They did nothing.
The last, can I just finish the debate, please? Oh, yes.
I'd just like you to clarify, explain to me how Councillor Hill's point was a point of order.
No, I'm not here to be accountable. Enough. I've got one more person for debate and I'd like to listen to it, please. So, Colin Matthews, please, what have you got to tell me? And the other members in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
2023 is the year of the coast. So it's good that this motion is coming forward in the year of the coast, because in 2021 I was contacted by Surfers Against Sewage from Sutton-on-Sea, and I responded to their concern and I raised the issue at Flooding and Water, and it was noted, but at that time Anglian Water were not attending regularly at the scrutiny committee. I also raised it at the LGA Coastal Special Interest Group, which we've heard about has been in our patch recently, and it was included by them in their report, Communities on the Edge. So it's really good that we're revisiting this and that we've got a very, very specific proposal from Councillor Daly, that we make it a focus and that we know where we're going. So thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you very much indeed. Now then, Councillor Overton, obviously you have the right to sum up. Before asking you to do that, I'm trying to put some structure to this. There's some very sound amendment words from Councillor Colin Davey. Would you be comfortable to add those to the motion, please?
Certainly.
Lovely. Right, so if those could now be added to the motion, do you have anything else to sum up, please?
I would, thank you. I would like to say that I know that we've had some political argy-bargy and so on, but nevertheless, I would like to return to the key point, is that everybody, I think, is concerned about this problem that affects us all, and I really appreciate that all of our council members thinking about it and making an effort to work with us. We work together to improve the situation. So thank you very much indeed for your support on that, and I hope that we will make some differences for our communities.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marion Overton. So, officers, we do have it that we have the motion and we have the addition. Right. I understand in the language of officers it is an agreed alteration. So, can we please vote of those people that are in favour of the motion with the... Oh, hang on. Apparently, I've got to check what we are voting on. Which is the original motion with plus Colin's amendment. Thank you. Now, are we all satisfied? Yes. Thankfully. Right. Those in favour, please. Fine. Any abstentions? Nobody against? Well, that's clearly carried. And I have to tell you, in closing this meeting, the chairman is looking forward to a well-earned glass of wine. Good afternoon.